My name is Chen Fong. I died in my old country home at the age of 72, and my body wasn't found until it had started to smell. But when I opened my eyes again, I was back at my son's wedding day. In the mirror was my 50-year-old face, and my fingers could feel the real heartbeat. The most terrifying part is, I remember it all, how I drove my daughter-in-law away, how I destroyed my son's marriage, and how I ended up alone, consumed by regret. On stage, the MC was delivering the wedding toast. While I clutched the tablecloth desperately, watching the daughter-in-law I once called a seductress in my past life offer me tea, this time, I must not repeat the same mistakes. The cold wind seeped through the cracks of the old house, and I curled up in the damp quilt, listening to my own ragged breaths. It's been 3 days since I've had a warm meal. My hand trembled as I reached for the water glass on the nightstand, only to knock it over. The water spread across the floor. As uncontainable as my failed life, Ming, I croaked my son's name, knowing there would be no answer. It's been 2 years since I last saw Li Ming. Back then, he stood in this dimly lit hall, his face paler than the peeling walls. Mom, I'm begging you, please stop bothering Xiao Xiao and the child. I remember how I hysterically smashed the thermos on the floor, calling him an ungrateful wretch who forgets his mother after getting a wife. The shattered pieces of the thermos still lie in the corner, covered in a thick layer of dust. Another violent coughing fit seized me, and I could feel life ebbing away from this 72-year-old body. Death isn't serene like in the dramas. It reeks of urine, medicine, and decay. In my dazed state, it was as if I had traveled back to Li Ming's childhood. How dependent he was on me back then. He'd even cling to my sleeve while falling asleep. My son Ming is going to get into Tsinghua University someday, I'd always boast to the neighbors, then force him to study late into the night. That time in middle school when he had a 39 degrees Celsius fever, I still made him finish 3 exam papers. My husband Li Guoqiang wanted to take him to the hospital, but I snapped, if he can't handle a little sickness, how will he ever achieve anything great? In the end, Li Ming didn't make it into Tsinghua, he only got into an average-tier university. I smashed every bowl in the house the day his college acceptance letter arrived. Later when he brought Zhang Xiao home to meet me, I could tell at first glance that girl was trouble. Sure enough, at the wedding she dared to defy my wishes by choosing champagne-colored tablecloths instead of bright red ones. Auntie, minimalist style is in these days, she said with a fake smile, her man-repelling lipstick gleaming as she spoke. I made the hotel change all the decorations on the spot. Watching her struggle to hold back tears, a wave of satisfaction washed over me. Married life felt like a battlefield. I moved into their new home and knocked on their bedroom door promptly at 6 a.m. every morning. So Zhang Xiao likes to sleep in. Anyone marrying into the Li family must follow our rules. Mom, Xiao Xiao worked overtime until dawn. Li Ming tried to defend her. My eyes welled up instantly. When I was pregnant with you, I got up at 5 a.m. every morning to cook for your father. Nothing gave me more satisfaction than stirring up arguments between them. Every time I saw Zhang Xiao slam the door and leave, with Li Ming clutching his hair in agony, I felt like I'd won. It wasn't until the twin grandsons were born that my control reached its peak. Everything from the formula brand to how often you change diapers must be done exactly as I say. Mom, the doctor said we can start trying solid foods. Zhang Xiao suggested timidly. I scoffed. What do you know? I ate nothing but rice cereal until I was 18 months old, and I turned out perfectly healthy. That night, I overheard them arguing in the bedroom. I can't take this anymore. Zhang Xiao's muffled sobs echoed. If this continues, we're getting a divorce. Li Ming remained silent for a long while before finally saying, I'll talk to Mom. Their way of talking was to send me back to the old house in the countryside, with red-rimmed eyes. Li Ming said, Mom, please stay here for a while. We'll come visit you often. They visited a few times during the first year, but then it was just phone calls. Eventually, even those became scarce. I wanted to hate Zhang Xiao, but I realized I hated myself even more. My consciousness grew increasingly hazy, and I seemed to see a young Li Ming running toward me, holding up a perfect test score. Look, Mom, with my last ounce of strength, I raised my hand, only to grasp at empty air. If I could do it all over again. If I could do it all over again. Auntie Chen, wake up, the wedding is about to start. My eyes snapped open to see a hotel attendant, both unfamiliar and yet strangely familiar, anxiously shaking my shoulder. In the mirror, I saw my 20 years younger self. I pinched my thigh hard. The pain convinced me this wasn't an illusion. The hotel dressing room mirror reflected my face, just past 50. The crow's feet weren't too deep yet. My hair dyed chestnut brown. Wearing that cheapao Zhang Xiao later secretly mocked as looking like a red lantern. Auntie Chen, the MC said it starts in 20 minutes. The server's voice called from outside the door. I answered with a trembling voice, my legs giving way as I sank onto the sofa. In my past life, I was throwing a fit in the banquet hall at this very moment, all because the tablecloths weren't bright red, digging my nails deep into my palms. I forced myself to stay calm. This was Li Ming's wedding, May 18th. 2015, the day my life took a turn. After taking 3 deep breaths, I pushed open the door to the dressing room. At the entrance of the banquet hall, Li Ming, dressed in a sharp suit, was talking to his groomsmen. When he saw me approaching, his body visibly stiffened for a moment. In my past life, around this time, I had just argued with him over the color of his tie. Mom, he called out softly. His eyes filled with wariness. My throat suddenly tightened. How long has it been since I last saw my son looking so young? The last time we met, his temples were already graying, and his eyes held nothing but exhaustion when he looked at me. You look handsome. I reached out to adjust his tie but stopped abruptly. Don't change a thing. It's perfect just like this. Li Ming's eyes widened as if he were looking at a complete stranger. The champagne-colored tablecloths in the banquet hall were indeed impeccably arranged. In my past life, I found this color unlucky and immediately had the hotel replace all of them. Now, I simply walked quietly to the main table and took my seat. Mother-in-law, I nodded in greeting to Zhang Zhao's mother. In my past life, I deliberately made things difficult for her during the tea ceremony, claiming their family's etiquette was lacking. Mrs. Zhang responded with a guarded smile. Clearly prepared for my provocation, as the music began, the bride made her entrance. Zhang Xiao wore a simple mermaid-style wedding dress, even more beautiful than I remembered. My past self scoffed at the dress for lacking grandeur, and immediately put on a disapproving face. The bride is so beautiful, I heard myself say. Several people at the main table turned to look at me at the same time, including my eldest sister. She leaned in and whispered, Fang, are you okay? I shook my head and focused on watching the ceremony. In my past life, I was too busy finding fault to even properly watch the couple exchange rings. Li Ming's hands trembled as he lifted Zhang Zhao's wedding veil. It suddenly reminded me of his first stage performance at age 5. He'd been just as nervous, clutching the hem of his shirt. Back then, I sat in the front row and mouthed the words, "Do your best," to him. Now, tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. My sister quickly handed me a tissue, saying, "It's a joyous occasion. Why the tears? I'm just happy," I replied, wiping away my tears and forcing a smile. During the toast, my past self deliberately gave Zhang Xiao a thin red envelope and publicly embarrassed her by saying, "Hope you give us a grandson soon." This time, I prepared a thick red envelope and a pair of jade earrings. That was the token of love Li Guoqiang gave me all those years ago. "Thank you, Auntie." Zhang Xiao was clearly taken aback as she accepted it. "Be happy," I said softly, not correcting how she addressed me. In my past life, I had insisted she call me Mom right away. After the banquet ended, Li Ming walked over with Zhang Xiao and said, "Mom, would you like to ride back with us?" I knew they had booked a hotel suite for their wedding night, but my past self insisted on tagging along despite everyone's warnings, and even had the nerve to complain that the room wasn't spacious enough. Liar. "No need, I'll have my older sister drive me." I patted his shoulder. "You too, get some rest." Li Ming and Zhang Xiao exchanged a look of disbelief. "Shall I pick you up tomorrow to see the new house?" Li Ming asked tentatively. The new house. In my past life, I moved in without permission, took the south-facing master bedroom, and even renovated the kitchen. "Let's talk about it later." I tried to sound casual. "You two should settle into your new life first." My older sister kept glancing at me out of the corner of her eye on the way home. "Fang, you're acting really strange today." The neon lights outside the car window flashed across my face. "Yeah, strange enough to seem possessed. Getting older has made me let go of things," I murmured. I slumped onto the couch as I returned to the empty house. After Li Guoqiang passed away, this old 60-square-meter apartment became both my prison and my battlefield. In my past life, I refused to live here alone at all costs and tried every way possible to move in with my son. Now, looking around, the faded curtains, the dusty coffee table, and Li Ming's certificates of achievement lining the wall from his childhood to now. These were my proof of being a good mother. With trembling hands, I pulled out my phone, the screen showing a photo of Li Ming and me taken today. In the photo, my smile was stiff, but at least I wasn't scowling like I did in my past life. A photo of Li Guoqiang from his lifetime sits on the nightstand. I picked it up and gently wiped it, murmuring, "Old man, I think I've made a lot of mistakes." The night was deep, yet sleep eluded me completely. Who would believe something like reincarnation? Maybe it's just the hallucination of a dying old man. 2. The pinch marks on my thighs still throbbed with a dull ache. Early the next morning, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Li Ming standing alone outside, holding a bag of soy milk and fried dough sticks. "Mom, I came to have breakfast with you," he said cautiously, as if testing the waters. My heart clenched. In my past life, on the second day of our marriage, I called him early in the morning to complain that Xiao Zhang was sleeping in and hadn't made breakfast. "Come on in," I said, stepping aside to let him enter and taking the breakfast. "Where's Xiao Xiao?" "She's still asleep," he replied, nervously watching for my reaction. "Of course, you must be exhausted from yesterday." I walked into the kitchen to get the bowls and chopsticks, hearing him gasp behind me. Breakfast was quiet and awkward. Li Ming hesitated several times, but finally couldn't hold back. "Mom, do you have some issue with Xiao Xiao?" I put down my chopsticks. In my past life, I really did list Zhang Zhao's top 10 flaws during breakfast. "No, she's fine." I paused. Mom just had a sudden realization about some things. The skepticism in Li Ming's eyes didn't fade in the slightest. "What things? You're grown up now. You should have your own life." I slowly stirred the soy milk. "I won't interfere with you two anymore." His expression was as if he'd just heard the most unbelievable tale. As he was leaving, Li Ming hesitated at the door for a long moment. "Mom, Xiao Xiao and I were talking. If you'd like to move in with us." "No need," I cut him off. "I'm used to living here." After closing the door, I leaned against it and slowly slid down to the floor. The first hurdle was cleared. But changing a personality shaped over 50 years, how easy could that be? In the days that followed, I forced myself not to disturb the newlyweds. Whenever I felt the urge to call and give advice on housework, I would clean Li Guoqiang's portrait instead. As I wiped the frame, tears began to fall. "Old man, why didn't I understand this back then?" A week later, Li Ming came to visit me with Zhang Xiao, who carried fruit in hand and wore a guarded expression. "Auntie, these lychees are from my friend's hometown. They're incredibly sweet." She placed the gift box on the table with gentle care, as if afraid of breaking something fragile. In my past life, I complained that lychees were too heat-inducing and made her take them back to exchange on the spot. "Thank you, I actually love these." I accepted the gift box and noticed the wedding ring on her ring finger, the same one I'd criticized in my past life for its small diamond. After half an hour of small talk, Li Ming finally couldn't hold back. "Mom, are you really okay? You're not feeling unwell, are you?" Zhang Xia tugged discreetly at his sleeve under the table. "I'm perfectly fine," I said, rising to my feet. "Wait here, I need to fetch something." I retrieved a document folder from the bedroom, placed it on the coffee table, and slid it toward them. "These are the property deed and bank books. I've thought it through. These should have been given to you long ago." Li Ming's face paled. "Mom, what are you doing?" "I'm not giving it to you now. I just want you to know," I said, struggling to stay composed. "In the future, just live your lives well. I won't be a burden to you." Zhang Zhao's eyes widened as if she were looking at a madman. After they left, I collapsed onto the sofa, completely drained. Change is like rowing against the current. If you let your guard down for even a moment, the powerful tide of habit will sweep you right back to where you started. The phone suddenly rang. It was my eldest sister, Fang. "The senior university is starting a calligraphy class next week. Do you want to sign up together?" My past self scoffed. "What's the point of studying at my age?" "Sure, sign me up," I heard myself say. After hanging up, I stepped onto the balcony. The early summer breeze carried the scent of flowers, and a few elderly women were chatting while pushing strollers downstairs. In my past life, I would have been at my son's place checking the fridge, then calling Zhang Xiao to tell her what groceries to buy. I took a deep breath, pulled out my phone, and deleted the memo filled with "House rules, change starts today." I hung the calendar on the kitchen wall and circled Li Ming's wedding date with a big red marker. 2 weeks have already passed. Every morning when I wake up, I stare at the ceiling for a few seconds, making sure I've really traveled back 20 years in time. The photo of Li Guoqiang on the dresser is my only confidant. Old man, I held back from calling Mingming again today, I said to the photo, my fingers gently tracing the edge of the frame. In my previous life, by this time I would have already moved into Li Ming's new home, knocking on their bedroom door promptly at 6 every morning. My phone screen lit up with a message from Li Ming, Mom, Xiao Xiao and I would like to visit you this weekend. I stared at the message for a full minute. In my past life, I never needed them to want to visit. I simply ordered them to come home for dinner every Saturday. Sure, let me know what you'd like to eat, and I'll prepare it in advance. After sending the reply, I immediately tossed my phone onto the sofa, as if afraid I might take it back. The senior university starts today. I slipped into that navy blue dress and practiced smiling in the mirror. In my past life, I thought this kind of event was only for people with too much time on their hands. The classroom was filled with silver-haired students, and I chose a seat toward the back. Is this seat taken? Asked a white-haired lady with curls. Pointing to the spot beside her, I shook my head. She sat down cheerfully and extended her hand. My name is Zhou Yufan. I was a primary school teacher before retiring. Chen Fang. I introduced myself briefly, feeling somewhat unaccustomed to such social interactions. The calligraphy teacher was a kindly old man who taught us how to hold the brush. I was practicing the 4 characters. Supreme goodness resembles water, and the ink was spreading on the rice paper. You write so well. Chen, Zhou Yufan leaned in to look. Her floral cologne reminding me of my mother. Class ended at noon, and Zhou Yufan warmly invited me to have lunch together. In my past life, I would have refused, thinking that eating with outsiders was a waste of time. Sure, I heard myself say. At a small eatery near the residential area, Zhou Yufan ordered 2 bowls of beef noodles. Her eyes narrowed into slits as she spoke. How many children do you have, Sister Chen? Just 1 son, and he just got married, I said, stirring my noodles. Oh. So you must have a lot more free time now. She took a bite of garlic. My daughter moved to the States after she got married. She only comes back once a year. I lowered my head to sip the soup, not telling her how I had ruined our son's marriage in my past life. On my way home, I took a detour to the area near Li Ming's place. Their marital home was in a new residential area in the east of the city, and in my past life, I would show up uninvited every day. Standing under the shade of the trees across the street, I saw Zhang Zhao's floral dress hanging on the balcony. The kitchen window was open, and the faint hum of the rain could be heard. In my past life, around this time, I would have been in there, guiding Zhang Zhao on how to make braised pork, digging my nails into my palms. I forced myself to turn and walk away. I woke up at 5 o'clock on Saturday morning. I went to the market and bought the freshest sea bass and pork ribs, along with the strawberries that Zhang Xiao loves. In my past life, I always bought the dishes that Li Ming liked, then criticized Zhang Xiao for being picky. The doorbell rang right at 10 o'clock. When I opened the door, I saw Li Ming holding a gift box, with Zhang Xiao standing behind him in a pale yellow dress. Auntie, I got this honey for you, Zhang Xiao said softly, handing over the box. As I took it, I noticed the pale pink nail polish on her nails. In my past life, I had publicly criticized the color as tacky. Thank you, come on in and have a seat. I ushered them inside. The fish is just steaming, it'll be a few more minutes. Li Ming wandered around the living room, his gaze lingering on his certificates hanging on the wall. Mom, why are these still up? Couldn't be bothered to take them off. I lied. Truth was, I needed them to remind me of how vain I used to be. Zhang Xiao offered to help in the kitchen, watching her clumsy knife skills. I bit my tongue and stayed silent. In my past life, I would have snatched the knife away and mocked her with, can't even chop a potato properly. Auntie, your apron is lovely. Zhang Xiao attempted to make conversation. Keep it if you like. I untied the apron and handed it to her, embroidered with, World's Greatest Chef, a title my past self insisted belonged exclusively to me. Lunch was more relaxed than I expected. Li Ming gradually loosened up and started sharing amusing stories from work. Zhang Xia occasionally chimed in, her eyes darting toward me as if gauging my reaction. The company is sending me to Hangzhou for a 3-day business trip next week, Li Ming said. My past self immediately objected, saying newlyweds shouldn't be apart. Hangzhou is lovely, don't forget to bring Xiao Xiao a silk scarf, I said, placing a piece of fish into Zhang Zhao's bowl. They exchanged that same incredulous look again. After the meal, Zhang Xiao insisted on doing the dishes. Sitting in the living room, I could hear her and Li Ming whispering in the kitchen, though I couldn't make out what they were saying. Mom, Li Ming sat down beside me, lowering his voice. Are you really okay? Sunlight streamed through the curtains, illuminating his profile, and I suddenly noticed a faint scar above his left eyebrow, a reminder of that fall he took when he was 7. I scolded him for half an hour that day, blaming him for being careless. I just want you to be happy, I said, reaching out to tousle his hair but stopping midair. As I saw them out, Zhang Xiao suddenly turned around and said, Auntie, are you free next weekend? I'd like you to come shopping with me for some clothes. I was taken aback. Our first shopping trip in my previous life ended in an argument after I criticized her choice of dress as too revealing. Sure, I heard myself say, closing the door. I leaned against it and took a deep breath. This kind of normal mother-in-law and daughter-in-law interaction feels as precarious as walking a tightrope to me. On Monday afternoon, I went for a walk in the residential square. Several elderly women were chatting on a bench, and I recognized them as neighbors from the same building. I heard that family's mother-in-law is quite formidable. She laid down the rules just 3 days after the new bride entered the household, said the loud woman in red. I slowed my pace. Young people these days don't buy into that old-fashioned thinking. My daughter-in-law won't even wash a single dish. Another chimed in, fanning herself. Old Chen's daughter-in-law got lucky. Her mother-in-law suddenly stopped meddling in their affairs. The woman in red whispered, lowering her voice. I heard she once walked in on her son and daughter-in-law. You know how it is, too embarrassed to interfere after that. My face flushed instantly. The rumors in my past life were even worse. They said my own son and daughter-in-law had teamed up to kick me out of the house. After walking away quickly, I sat down in the fitness area, my palms drenched in sweat. For the first time since my rebirth, I began to question whether my choices were right. Perhaps it's a mother-in-law's duty to exercise proper discipline, as the old lady in red said. A mother-in-law who doesn't take charge isn't a good one. My phone vibrated. It was a message from the senior university class group. Zhou Yufan shared some calligraphy pieces and tagged me, asking if I wanted to walk together to the next class. I replied with a smiley emoji. At least now, I have my own social circle. On Wednesday evening, Li Ming called and said, Mom, Xiao Xiao has a checkup at the hospital tomorrow. Would you like to come along? My heart skipped a beat. In my past life, Zhang Xia hadn't gotten pregnant 6 months after marriage, and I had forced her to drink bitter herbal medicine every day. What kind of checkup? I tried to keep my voice steady. Just a routine physical, Li Ming stammered. It suddenly dawned on me. They might be trying for a baby. In my past life, I insisted on tagging along to every preconception checkup and demanded to see the reports. I've got a calligraphy class event tomorrow, I said. You all go ahead without me, just reach out if anything comes up. After hanging up the phone, I slumped onto the couch. Change is like quitting smoking. The hardest part is that moment when you instinctively reach for it. The next day after calligraphy class, Zhou Yufan pulled me aside mysteriously and said, Hey, old Chen. There's a great event this Friday, a seniors ballroom dance class starting up. Want to go together? In my past life, I thought dancing was something only eccentric old ladies would do. I'll think about it, I said, avoiding a direct refusal. On my way home, I passed by a pharmacy and, on a whim, went in and bought a few boxes of prenatal vitamins and a jar of sour plums. That evening, I quietly left the items at Li Ming's doorstep, rang the doorbell, and quickly ducked into the stairwell. My heart was pounding like a thief's when I heard Zhang Xiao opening the door. Who's there? She muttered to herself, puzzled, followed by the rustling of a plastic bag. Huh, what's this? Holding my breath, I heard her call out to Li Ming, Ming, someone left these things at the door. I tiptoed downstairs and sat on the bench in the residential complex for a long time. The night breeze cooled the flush on my face. For the first time in what felt like 2 lifetimes, I was being genuinely kind to my daughter-in-law without expecting anything in return. My phone lit up with a message from Li Ming. Mom, was it you who left that? After a moment's hesitation, I replied, Xiao Xiao's health comes first. I immediately turned off my phone after sending it, too nervous to check for a response. The stars twinkled in the sky, as if mocking my clumsy kindness. On Saturday morning, I changed into that light blue shirt. In my past life, I never wore it, thinking the color was too plain. waiting for Zhang Xiao to pick me up for shopping. The doorbell rang, but when I opened the door, only Li Ming was there. Xiao Xiao got called in for an unexpected shift, he said, scratching his head. She said she'll reschedule with you another time. I tried to hide my disappointment. No worries. Work comes first, Mom, Li Ming said suddenly. Thank you for the supplements, Xiao Xiao. She was really touched. Actually, my eyes suddenly welled up. And I quickly turned to grab my bag. Let's go, have lunch with your mom. In the mall, Li Ming was absent-mindedly scrolling through his phone. I knew he was waiting for a message from Zhang Xiao. My past self would have scolded him for forgetting his mother after getting a wife. Ming, why don't you go pick Xiao Xiao up from work? I said after dinner. I'll just browse around on my own. His relieved expression left me with mixed feelings of heartache and comfort. Walking alone through the mall, I passed by a maternity and baby store. The window displayed adorable baby onesies. In my past life, I'd bought piles of them without considering Zhang Zhao's taste. My phone buzzed with a message from Zhou Yufan. Old Chen, are you definitely going to the dance class on Friday? I signed you up. Gazing at the store window, I replied, I'm in. Change begins with every small decision. The phone rang at 5 a.m., jolting me awake from my dream. Mom. Li Ming's voice trembled over the phone. Xiao Xiao is bleeding. We're heading to the hospital now. I snapped wide awake, my fingers clutching the phone tightly. In my past life, this call came 3 months later. My first instinct was to demand what foolish thing Zhang Xiao had done. Don't panic, I'm on my way. I scrambled out of bed, my legs trembling as I pulled on my clothes. The early morning streets were deserted. The taxi driver glanced at me through the rearview mirror. Emergency. I nodded, my palms slick with sweat. When Zhang Xiao had her first miscarriage in the past life, I'd yelled at her in the hospital corridor for not even being able to carry a child to term. The emergency lights in the maternity hospital stung my eyes. Li Ming sat on the hallway bench with his head in his hands, while Zhang Xia lay pale on the gurney. Mom, Li Ming stood up, his eyes red-rimmed. I hurried to Zhang Xia's side and took her ice-cold hand. In my past life, I never did this, Auntie. Zhang Xiao spoke weakly, her eyes darting nervously as if expecting my scolding. Don't speak, save your strength. I gently squeezed her fingers. What did the doctor say? Threatened miscarriage. Bed rest is required. A female doctor in a white coat approached, flipping through the medical chart. Your HCG levels are acceptable. With proper care, the pregnancy should be fine. I nodded. In my past life, I hadn't even listened to the doctor's explanation. Too busy complaining about how fragile young people are these days. The nurse wheeled Zhang Xiao toward the ward, with Li Ming following anxiously beside her, looking completely at a loss. I stood there, suddenly realizing I had no right to follow them inside. Mom, Li Ming turned back to look at me. You go stay with Xiao Xiao. I waved my hand. I'll go get some essentials. The hospital convenience store had a pitifully small selection of goods. I grabbed a few bottles of mineral water, some wet wipes, and a pack of brown sugar. In my past life, I would have only bought Li Ming's favorite snacks. Back at the hospital room door, I heard Zhang Xia's muffled sobs. Ming, I'm scared. It's all right. The doctor said everything's fine. Li Ming murmured reassuringly. I took a deep breath and knocked before entering. Zhang Xiao quickly wiped away her tears, her body visibly tensing up. Have some brown sugar water. I poured a cup and handed it to her, deliberately bypassing Li Ming's outstretched hand to give it directly to Zhang Xiao. She hesitated before taking it, murmuring a quiet thank you. In my past life, I always had Li Ming pass along everything for me, as if showing direct kindness to Zhang Xiao would mean losing some sort of game. The doctor insisted on a 3-day hospital stay for observation. I offered to stay overnight to keep her company, leaving Li Ming speechless with surprise. You have work tomorrow, I said, plugging the charger into the bedside outlet. I'm retired. I've got nothing but time. Zhang Zhao's eyes widened, her fingers twisting the bedsheet. In my past life, I believed keeping vigil at the bedside was a daughter-in-law's duty to her mother-in-law. Late into the night, I sent Li Ming home to rest. Only the steady beep of the monitor and Zhang Zhao's soft breathing remained in the hospital room. Auntie, Zhang Xiao spoke up in the darkness. Thank you. My throat felt choked up. In my past life, I would have been listing all her wrongdoings at this moment. Get some rest. Those were the only 2 words I managed to say. Early the next morning, Li Ming arrived with breakfast while I was on a call at the end of the hallway, senior university, taking 3 days off. Yes, someone in the family is hospitalized. After hanging up, I turned around and met Li Ming's complicated gaze. Mom, you've really changed, he said, handing me a cup of soy milk. You used to hate taking time off. I bit the straw and stayed silent. Yeah, changed, at the cost of a life. The rounding doctor announced that Zhang Xiao could be discharged, but must stay in bed for 2 weeks. Li Ming looked troubled. He was tied up with an important project. I'll come cook for you every day, I said, and I won't disturb Xiao Xiao's rest. As I said this, I deliberately avoided looking at Zhang Xiao's expression. In my past life, I would have moved into their home to supervise the pregnancy. 3. When I got home, I dug out the yarn that had been buried at the bottom of a chest. After Li Guoqiang left, I never knitted anything again. My fingers fumbled clumsily with the yarn, casting on stitches while trying to recall how to knit a baby sweater. In my past life, I bought a bunch of expensive imported baby clothes and made a point of showing off to relatives, claiming, all of these were prepared by me, the grandmother. The stitches were all crooked. I kept knitting, unraveling, and starting over. 3 days later, a pale yellow little sweater finally took shape. Though one sleeve was longer than the other, when I went to pick them up from the hospital, I packed the sweater and the nutritional supplements I bought into a bag, hiding them at the very bottom. Zhang Xiao was wheeled out in a wheelchair, looking much better. I resisted the urge to remind her that pregnant women shouldn't wear makeup. In my past life, I even policed which skincare products she used. The elevator in their apartment was broken. So Li Ming carried Zhang Xiao on his back while I followed behind, lugging all the bags. My knees ached as I climbed to the 5th floor, but I kept it to myself. Mom, take it slow, Li Ming said, turning back to look at me, his forehead beaded with sweat. Keep your wife in check, I gasped, regretting the words as soon as they left my mouth. Old habits surface like hiccups sometimes. Zhang Xiao stiffened noticeably on Li Ming's back. After stepping inside, I stuffed the groceries into the fridge but still felt too awkward to take out the sweater. Auntie, why don't you sit for a bit? Zhang Xiao said, leaning back on the couch. I shook my head. You two rest. I should head home. Pausing at the door, I turned back and asked, what would you like to eat tomorrow? Anything, whatever's fine, Zhang Xiao replied softly. In my past life, I absolutely hated the answer, whatever. It felt like a sign of disrespect. Now, I just nodded and said, then I'll make cushion carp soup. Closing the door, I let out a long sigh. Change is like sailing against the wind. The moment you let your guard down, you're blown right back to where you started. For the next week, I showed up at their house every day at 10 a.m. sharp, prepared lunch and dinner, and then left. Zhang Xia gradually let her guard down, going from cautious to relaxed, and occasionally chatted with me. Auntie, your sauerkraut fish is absolutely delicious, she said yesterday. When grocery shopping today, I made sure to pick the freshest grass carp. Just as I was about to knock, I heard Zhang Xiao retching inside, with Li Ming anxiously comforting her. It's so awful, Zhang Xiao whimpered. Should we call Mom over? Li Ming asked. No, Auntie's already had it rough enough. I took 2 steps back, gently placed the food by the door, and texted Li Ming that something urgent came up and I couldn't make it, leaving the food outside. On my way home, I stopped by the supermarket and bought some premium preserved plums and dried tangerine peel. In a past life, when Zhang Xiao had morning sickness, I forced her to drink the herbal medicine I brewed, saying, bitter medicine is the most effective. I spent the whole afternoon brewing the sour plum drink, took a sip, so tart it made me wince, so I added 2 more spoonfuls of honey. At 9 in the evening, I went back to the building where they lived. The lights were still on. I asked a young man heading upstairs to take the thermal container up for me. Just say, it's a food delivery. Early the next morning, I found the clean thermal container at my door with a note tucked under it. Thanks, Auntie. Xiao Xiao said she's feeling much better. The handwriting is Li Ming's. My eyes suddenly grew warm. In my past life, I would have wanted the whole world to know about even the smallest effort I made. Yet now I find contentment in such a simple thing. Over the weekend at the senior university, Zhou Yufan immediately noticed my dark circles. Old Chen, haven't been sleeping well lately. My daughter-in-law is pregnant, and I'm a bit worried. I replied softly. Oh, that's wonderful, she exclaimed with a clap of her hands. But you're being such a devoted mother-in-law. Young people these days have their own ideas. Indeed, in my past life, I resented Zhang Xiao the most for having her own ideas. On my way home from class, I passed by a baby store and couldn't resist going in. A sales assistant greeted me warmly. Here to shop for your grandchild, Grandma. I instinctively wanted to correct him and say, grandson from my daughter's side, but I held back. In my past life, I insisted that the grandson must carry our family name, which led to a huge argument with Zhang Xiao's parents. Just browsing, I mumbled vaguely, and ended up buying a pair of soft baby socks. As I was checking out, my phone rang. Li Ming sent an ultrasound photo with the message, Mom, the doctor says it might be twins, two blurry little dots on the photo, like two stars in the universe. Suddenly, my tears fell onto the phone screen. In my past life, when I first saw the ultrasound, all I could think to ask was, boy or girl, back home. I dug out that little crooked sweater I'd knitted and rushed to make a blue one. The stitches were much neater this time, and I even embroidered two little boats on it. The day I finished the sweater, I mustered up the courage to visit their home. Zhang Xiao was lying on the couch reading a parenting book, her belly slightly rounded. Auntie, she sat up in surprise, instinctively hiding the book behind her back. In my past life, I'd always criticized her reading choices as unreliable. I knitted two sweaters, I said, placing the bag directly on the coffee table, not sure if they'll fit. Zhang Xiao carefully took out the sweaters, her eyes suddenly lighting up. What adorable little boats. Did you knit these yourself? I nodded, noticing the copy of the Sears parenting book by her side. That foreign thing I'd tossed out like trash in my past life. Auntie, Zhang Xiao suddenly choked up. Thank you. She stood up, hesitated for a moment, then gently embraced me. I froze in place, catching the faint scent of shampoo in her hair. In our past lives, we never shared an embrace like this. This was the scene Li Ming walked in on when he returned home. The folder in his hand dropped to the floor with a thud. Mom, Xiao Xiao. Zhang Xiao blushed and released me, saying, Auntie knitted a baby sweater. Li Ming picked up the document folder, his eyes darting between us before settling on the sweater on the coffee table. Mom, you know how to do this. I learned it when I was younger, I said casually, not mentioning that this was the first time I'd touched knitting wool since Li Guoqiang left. That evening, I stayed for dinner. Surprisingly, Zhang Xiao cooked two dishes, though they were a bit too oily and undersalted. I didn't say a word. Auntie, I have the anatomy scan next Wednesday, Zhang Xiao said, biting her chopsticks. Would you like to come along? In my past life, I insisted on controlling every prenatal checkup, even arguing with doctors in the examination room. You young folks can handle it, I said, picking up a piece of chicken with my chopsticks. Just fill me in when you get back. Li Ming quietly reached under the table and held Zhang Xiao's hand. On my way home, my phone rang. It was a notification from the senior center dance class. Rehearsal tomorrow at 2 p.m. In my past life, I thought dancing was something only eccentric old ladies did, but now, I'm actually looking forward to it. I stopped by the pharmacy and bought a few more boxes of prenatal vitamins. This time, I took them straight to their place. Take one daily, I said to Li Ming as he opened the door. It's good for Xiao Xiao and the baby. Mom, Li Ming took the medicine box, his voice a bit hoarse. Would you like to come stay with us for a while? This was the invitation I'd dreamed of in my past life. But now I shook my head. No need, you two need your space. As I closed the door, I heard Li Ming say inside, Xiao Xiao, Mom has really changed. The night breeze dried the moisture at the corners of my eyes. Change is painful, but it's worth it. The phone rang at 2:17 in the dead of night. I jolted awake from my dream, heart pounding. A call at this hour is never good news. Mom, Li Ming's voice was choked with emotion. Xiao Xiao fell. We're on the way to the hospital. There's bleeding. I snapped awake, my fingers gripping the phone like a vice. This call in my past life had come at 4 a.m. And my first thought was, how could she be so careless? Which hospital? I'm on my way. I was already getting dressed, my voice eerily calm. City maternity. Mom, I'm so scared. Li Ming's voice choked with tears. Take a deep breath. Look after Xiao Xiao. I hung up, my legs trembling as I rushed to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. My reflection in the mirror was deathly pale. In our past life, after Zhang Zhao's first miscarriage, I snapped at her. You couldn't even keep a child. which sent her into a month-long depression. The taxi sped through the deserted streets. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror and asked, "Heading to the ER?" I nodded, digging my nails deep into my palms. The last time I was at this hospital was to accompany Zhang Xiao for her prenatal checkup. Back then, I could still bite my tongue and keep my opinions to myself. The emergency room lights were blindingly harsh. Li Ming sat on the hallway bench with his head in his hands, his white shirt stained with blood. "Mom," he sprang to his feet, his eyes bloodshot. "The doctors examining her said it might be a threatened miscarriage." I patted his shoulder, resisting the urge to demand, like I had in my past life, "How could you let this happen to your wife?" Through the glass window, I saw Zhang Xiao lying in the hospital bed, her face pale and drained of color. "What happened?" I asked softly. Li Ming ran his hands through his hair in distress. "Xiao Xiao wanted water in the middle of the night, but I didn't hear her. She got up by herself and slipped in the bathroom." In my past life, I had scolded Li Ming mercilessly, accusing them of being completely irresponsible. The nurse pushed the door open and said, "Family, the patient needs to be admitted for observation. The fetus is unstable." "What are the chances of keeping it?" I asked, my voice calmer than I expected. "It's too early to tell. We'll need to monitor the next 48 hours, the nurse replied, handing over a stack of forms. "Go ahead and get the paperwork started." Li Ming reached for the forms, but I stepped in first. "You stay with Xiao Xiao, I'll handle it." There was a line at the payment window, and my legs wouldn't stop shaking. In my past life, I never bothered with these trivial matters, only focusing on scolding Zhang Xiao in the hospital room. After finishing the paperwork and returning, Zhang Xiao had already been wheeled into the ward. When she saw me enter, her body visibly stiffened, and her eyes darted around nervously. "Auntie," she whispered weakly, as if bracing for my scolding. I walked to the bedside and gently took her hand, something my past self would never have done. "Don't overthink it, just rest." Her hand felt cold and clammy, her knuckles tense. I noticed the well-worn copy of the Sears parenting book on the nightstand, its corners dog-eared. The doctor came by on rounds and used a lot of medical jargon. In my past life, I would have interrupted the doctor and insisted on using old-fashioned methods to protect the pregnancy. This time, I just listened quietly and then asked, "What do you need us to do to help?" "Complete bed rest, for at least a week," the doctor said, adjusting his glasses. "Staying calm is also very important." Zhang Xia closed her eyes, tears trickling down from the corners. I took a tissue and gently wiped them away for her. "Mom, you should go back and rest. I'll stay here and keep watch," Li Ming said. I shook my head. "You have work tomorrow." "I'm retired, so it's fine." In my past life, I thought keeping vigil by the sickbed was a daughter-in-law's duty to her mother-in-law, but now the roles are reversed. The nurse came to administer the fetal preservation for, and Zhang Xiao turned her face away in fear. I instinctively grabbed her other hand, as if she were my own daughter. "It'll stop hurting soon," I said, my voice so gentle it sounded unfamiliar to me. The drip sound was especially distinct in the quiet hospital room. Li Ming dozed off curled up in the visitor's chair, and Zhang Xiao finally closed her eyes to rest as well. I sat by the bedside, watching the four drip steadily, outside the window. The sky was gradually brightening. In my past life, around this time, I would have been complaining about the hospital's hard chairs and the pungent smell of disinfectant. When the nurse came to change the four bag, Zhang Xiao woke up and immediately grew tense again. I poured a cup of warm water, inserted a straw, and held it to her lips. "Thank you, Auntie," she murmured, her guarded expression softening slightly. During morning rounds, the doctor said the test results showed some improvement, but further observation was still needed. Li Ming had to rush to the office for an urgent matter, and before leaving, he looked at me as if he wanted to say something but hesitated. "Go ahead, I've got this," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure myself. Only the two of us remained in the hospital room. Zhang Xia stared at the ceiling, while I pretended to read the newspaper, not taking in a single word. "Auntie," she said suddenly, "you don't have to stay with me the whole time, I'm fine." I folded the newspaper. "Are you hungry? What would you like to eat?" She froze, clearly not expecting me to ask that. In my past life, I would have just decided what she should eat because it was good for the baby. "A little, I'd like some sour plum drink," she said hesitantly. I stood up. "I'll go home and make it, be right back." Stepping out of the ward, I let out a long sigh. Change is like walking in ill-fitting shoes. Every step feels awkward. I had all the ingredients for sour plum soup at home. While brewing it, I remembered forcing Zhang Xiao to drink those bitter medicines in my past life, and a heaviness settled in my chest. When I got back to the hospital, Zhang Xiao was reading that parenting book. Seeing me walk in, she instinctively hid the book under the covers. The new knowledge these days. It's actually pretty good, I said, setting down the thermal container and forcing a smile. Her eyes widened as if she were looking at an alien. As the sour plum tea poured into the cup, the sweet and tangy aroma filled the entire hospital room. Zhang Xiao took small sips, her eyes gradually lighting up. This is delicious, just like the one we had at the entrance last time. I pretended not to hear and turned to tidy up the things on the bedside table. When Li Ming rushed over in the afternoon, Zhang Xiao was fast asleep. I was dozing off in the chair by the window. Still holding the newspaper, Mom, Li Ming said softly, you should go back and get some rest. I shook my head. Let's wait until Xiao Xiao wakes up and ask what she'd like for dinner. Li Ming stared at me for a long time before finally saying, Mom, you've really changed. I didn't answer because Zhang Xiao had woken up and was weakly calling out, Ming Ming. 3 days later, the doctor announced that the critical period had mostly passed. But further hospitalization for observation was still needed. Zhang Xiao's complexion had improved significantly, and he was even able to sit up and watch some TV. I shuttled between home and the hospital every day, brewing all kinds of nourishing soups. In my past life, I would have thought this was what a daughter-in-law ought to do. Auntie, don't overwork yourself, Zhang Xiao said today, with genuine concern in her eyes. It's fine, I actually enjoy it, and that's the truth. Watching her get better day by day gives me a strangely satisfying feeling. The other expectant mothers in the ward all have family members taking turns to care for them. In my past life, I would have complained that Zhang Xiao made my life so hard, but now I feel blessed to be able to take care of her. On the 5th day at noon, while I was peeling an apple, Zhang Xiao suddenly said, Auntie, may I ask you a question? Go ahead, I said as I cut the apple into small pieces. Why have you suddenly become so kind to me? The fruit knife stilled in my fingers. Could I tell her this realization cost a life? As you get older, things become clearer, I said, handing her the apple. I was wrong before, I'm sorry. Zhang Xiao's eyes reddened. Truth is, I've always been afraid of you. Those words pierced my heart like a knife. In my past life, I took her reverence for granted and even felt smug about it. You don't have to be afraid anymore, I said softly. Though I knew trust takes time to build, the doctor finally approved Zhang Xiao's discharge but insisted she continue bed rest. While Li Ming was handling the paperwork, Zhang Xiao suddenly grabbed my hand. Mom, she called me that for the first time, her voice barely a whisper. Thank you. My tears instantly overflowed. In my past life, I had waited 5 years just to hear that word, Mom. When Li Ming came back and saw my reddened eyes, he immediately grew concerned. What's wrong? It's nothing. I wiped away my tears. I'm just happy. While packing, I found that copy of the Sears parenting book, carefully wrapped. In my past life, I would have accidentally left it at the hospital. Back home, I collapsed onto the couch, every bone in my body feeling like it had fallen apart. Yet there was a strange sense of calm in my heart, like the sea after a storm. My phone rang. It was Zhou Yufan from the senior center. Old Chen, where have you been? We've been waiting to see you ballroom dance. Just some family matters. I'll definitely be there next week, I said with a laugh, suddenly realizing it had been 2 weeks since I'd even thought about controlling anything. Early the next morning, I went to the market and bought the freshest cushion carp and tofu. In my past life, I saw making soup as serving my daughter-in-law, but now I genuinely enjoy it. I ran into the neighbor lady downstairs at Li Ming's place. I heard your daughter-in-law is in the hospital. She leaned in gossiping. Young people these days make such a fuss over every little thing. In my past life, I would have joined in criticizing Zhang Xiao. Now I just smiled and said, you have to be careful during pregnancy. As I went upstairs, my steps were lighter than I had expected. Li Ming answered the door after I knocked. He looked tired but relaxed. Mom, Xiao Xiao said she'd love to have your homemade pickled fish soup. That really tugged at my heartstrings. In her past life, Zhang Xiao never dared to ask for anything. In the kitchen, I realized I remembered where every spice was kept. Zhang Xiao leaned against the kitchen door watching me work, her belly noticeably swollen. Mom, could you teach me how to make this dish? She asked, I nearly cut my finger. In my past life, I'd always hogged the kitchen and never let her help. Alright, I handed her another knife. Let's start with slicing the fish. When Li Ming returned, he found the two of us bustling about in the kitchen, the briefcase in his hand clattered to the floor. Ming, wash the scallions for me, Zhang Xia instructed casually, as if this was how we always interacted. At dinner, Zhang Xiao put a piece of fish in my bowl and said, "Mom, try this and see if it tastes right." That simple gesture made my throat tighten with emotion. In our past life, meal times were always a silent battle of wills between us. As I was leaving, Li Ming walked me downstairs, the night wind tousled his hair, and he suddenly hugged me, saying, "Thank you, Mom." The hug was so tight, it reminded me of how he used to throw himself into my arms after falling down as a little boy. Silly child. I patted his back. Go on back home now. Xiao Xiao needs someone to look after her. Walking home alone. The streetlight stretched my shadow long and thin. In my past life, I should have been at my son's house, taking charge of things. Right now, not walking alone on a dark road, but strangely, I felt an unprecedented sense of peace and security. Change is painful, but it's worth it, like pulling a bad tooth. The real healing begins after the initial pain. ##Chapter 6. The twins arrive. The phone rang at 4:18 in the morning, and I answered it almost instantly. "Mom, Xiao Xiao's going into labor." Li Ming's voice was shrill and frantic. The doctor said the twins might come early. I bolted upright, my vision going black for a split second. In my past life on this very day, I spent half an hour doing my makeup before leaving the house because you have to look presentable when meeting your grandchildren. "I'll be right there." 3 minutes later, I was already rushing out the door. In the taxi, I clutched my phone tightly. In my past life, when Zhang Xiao was giving birth, I kept criticizing her outside the delivery room for being disobedient during her pregnancy, which nearly made Li Ming turn against me. The emergency lights at the maternity and child hospital were painfully bright. Li Ming paced back and forth outside the delivery room, his hair a disheveled mess. "Mom," he rushed over, his eyes bloodshot. "She's 3 centimeters dilated. The doctor said she might need a C-section." I patted his shoulder, resisting the urge to complain like I did in the past about how natural birth is better for the baby. The digital clock in the hallway showed 5:07 a.m. Zhang Xiao had been in there for 40 minutes. "Just sit and wait." I pressed Li Ming down onto the bench. Childbirth doesn't happen that quickly. In my past life, I took up all the benches outside the delivery room, spreading out various good luck talismans, which earned me multiple warnings from the nurses. Time felt like congealed glue. Li Ming kept pacing back and forth, then sitting back down to tug at his hair. As I watched the second hand on the wall, I remembered how, in my past life, I rushed to see my grandson right after Zhang Xiao gave birth, completely neglecting to check on her. "Family of Li Ming." The nurse pushed the door open. "It's twins, 2 boys, mother and babies are both doing well." Li Ming burst into tears, his legs too weak to stand. I held on to him, my own hands trembling. "The mother is still being stitched up, and the babies will go to the neonatal unit for observation," the nurse said with a smile. "The twins are a bit underweight, but all their vitals are normal." In my past life, hearing "underweight" would have made me blame Zhang Xiao for not eating enough during pregnancy. Now I just nod and say, "You've been through so much." An hour later, the nurse wheeled Zhang Xiao out. Her face was pale as paper, with sweat-dampened hair clinging to her forehead. Yet her eyes shone with an extraordinary brightness. "Ming," she called out weakly, and Li Ming immediately rushed over to grasp her hand. I stood 2 steps away, resisting the urge to push past Li Ming like I did in my past life. Zhang Xiao's gaze shifted to me, a faint smile touching her lips. "Mom, the children take after Ming." For tears welled up in my eyes. She had said the same thing in our previous life, and I had replied, "Thank goodness they don't take after you. You're amazing." I whispered, the words catching in my throat, heavy as 1,000 pounds. The neonatal unit doesn't allow visitors, so we could only watch through the glass. 2 tiny, rosy babies lay side by side in incubators, so small it tugged at your heartstrings, the nurse explained. "The one on the left is the older brother, the right is the younger. The older weighs 4 Jin and 3 Liang, the younger 4 Jin and 1 Liang." In my past life, I was deeply unhappy with their weight and immediately scolded Zhang Xiao for not heeding my advice during her pregnancy. "I'm just pressed against the glass. gazing greedily at the two little lives. Mom, why don't you give them nicknames? Li Ming said suddenly. The names from their past life were something I forced upon them. I never even asked Zhang Xiao's opinion. Well, maybe let Xiao Xiao decide. I glanced over at Zhang Xiao lying in the hospital bed. She blinked in surprise. Mom, you've seen it all. After a few rounds of polite deferral, we settled on naming the older brother Anan and the younger one Kong Kong, symbolizing peace and health. During those days in the hospital, I delivered meals daily but no longer provided round-the-clock care like I did during the bed rest period. In my past life, I treated the hospital room as my personal domain. Even Zhang Zhao's parents had to tread carefully when visiting their grandchild. The day before Zhang Xiao was discharged from the hospital, a nurse came to teach newborn care. I sat in the corner and listened attentively, not constantly interrupting like I did in my past life with remarks like, "That's not how we did it back in my day. Mom, aren't you going to come over and learn?" Zhang Xiao called out to me. I shook my head and said, "You young people pick things up quickly. I'm too old to remember all this." That's a lie. I just didn't want to play the know-it-all mother-in-law anymore. On the day they came home, I went early to clean the house. In my past life, I would have gone to inspect their preparations and then criticized everything. The twins' cribs were placed side by side in the master bedroom, and Zhang Xiao insisted on breastfeeding. In my past life, I found it too troublesome and insisted on using formula so others could feed the baby too. "Mom, would you like to hold Anan?" Li Ming handed over the swaddled baby. The little one was as light as a feather, with a tiny wrinkled face, yet radiated an astonishing vitality. My arms automatically adjusted to the most comfortable position. "The body is more honest than memory. You're a natural at this." Zhang Xiao remarked in surprise. "Mingming was this tiny once too," I murmured, not mentioning how I used to complain about the child being hard to handle. After returning home, I made a conscious effort not to disturb them. I only texted, "Need any help?" on WeChat instead of barging in unannounced like I did in the past. In the first month, Zhang Xiao's parents came to help. In my past life, I had a huge argument with my daughter-in-law's mother over who was more qualified to care for our grandson. This time, I took a step back on my own initiative, only occasionally bringing over some homemade soup. On the day of the full moon celebration, I wore that dark red cheongsam that Zhang Xiao gave me. In my past life, I thought it wasn't festive enough, so I bought a bright red one myself. In the hotel, the two little stars were passed around and held by everyone. Sleeping soundly, I sat in the corner, not vying to be the center of attention like I did in my past life. "Sister Fang, why aren't you going to hold your grandchild?" The eldest sister leaned over and asked. "Let them sleep a little longer," I said, taking a sip of tea. Zhang Xiao suddenly walked over and placed Anan in my arms, saying, "Mom, Anan is looking for you." The little one wriggled in my arms and actually smiled. My tears nearly fell onto his face. After the full moon celebration, Zhang Xiao's parents returned home, leaving the heavy responsibility of childcare to the young couple. Li Ming took paternity leave, but was clearly overwhelmed and fumbling through the tasks. I went to help for 2 hours every morning, strictly following their methods for preparing formula and changing diapers. In my past life, I found these Western methods too cumbersome and always secretly did things my own way. "Mom, you're so good at changing diapers," Zhang Xiao said, rubbing his sore shoulders. "Practice makes perfect." I didn't mention that I'd secretly been practicing with a doll at home. One day, while I was in my calligraphy class at the senior center, my phone started buzzing like crazy. It was a missed call from Li Ming and over a dozen voice messages. "Mom, Anan has a fever, 38.5 degrees. Xiao Xiao is going crazy with worry." I dropped my calligraphy brush and rushed to their house. In my past life, when Anan had his first fever, I scolded Zhang Xiao saying, "You can't even take care of a child properly," then forced him to drink my homemade herbal concoction. As soon as I entered, I heard Anan's heart-wrenching cries. Zhang Xiao was pacing back and forth in the living room holding him, tear stains covering her face. Li Ming was scrambling to get things ready for the hospital visit. "Mom," Zhang Xiao exclaimed upon seeing me, as if spotting a lifeline, "Anan refuses to take the fever medicine." I washed my hands and gently took Anan into my arms. His little face was flushed bright red from the fever, and he was breathing rapidly. "How about trying a sponge bath with warm water?" I suggested. In my past life, I would have just ordered them what to do. Zhang Xiao nodded vigorously. I had Li Ming bring a basin and towel. then demonstrated how to gently wipe the armpits and groin with warm water. Mom, you really know a lot about this, Li Ming said with a sigh of relief. Just an old trick. I didn't mention I'd pulled an all-nighter reviewing parenting books. After 30 minutes of sponge bathing, Anand's temperature dropped to 38 degrees. I suggested we keep monitoring instead of insisting on an immediate four-drip at the hospital like I did in my past life. Hospitals are high risk for cross-infection, I said, but it's your call. Zhang Xiao and Li Ming exchanged a knowing glance and decided to wait another hour. I showed Zhang Xiao how to slowly administer the fever medicine with a dispenser instead of forcing it down by pinching her nose. Mom, Zhang Xiao suddenly burst into tears. Thank you for not scolding me. My heart ached as if pierced by a needle. In my past life, I blamed every little mishap on her incompetence. Anand's fever broke by evening. As I was about to leave, Zhang Xiao held my arm and said, Mom, could you stay for dinner? At the dinner table, Zhang Xiao's parents video called to see their grandson. In my past life, I would have rushed to answer the phone, eager to show off how well I was taking care of things. This time, I just quietly ate my meal and let the family chat among themselves. Oh, my in-law is here too, Zhang Xiao's mother said, looking surprised when she saw me on the screen. Mom was a huge help. Zhang Xiao turned the camera toward me. Anan had a fever today, and it was all thanks to her. I waved my hand to say it was nothing, but a warm feeling washed over me. In my past life, I gave tenfold effort but received not a shred of gratitude, all because I went about it the wrong way. When I got home that evening, I collapsed onto the couch, aching all over. My phone buzzed. A photo of Anan sleeping, sent by Li Ming, along with a message. Mom, I couldn't have made it today without you. I stared at the photo for a long time, until the screen went dark. In my past life, I always demanded gratitude from my son, but now I find contentment in a simple, thank you. The next day, when I went to help, I noticed a copy of the American Academy of Pediatrics, Caring for Your Baby and Young Child, on the coffee table, open to the page about treating infant fever. This book is quite good, I said to Zhang Xiao, though deep down I still felt the old ways were more reliable. Zhang Xiao's eyes lit up. Mom, don't you find these foreign methods a bit strange? Times are changing, I said with feigned nonchalance, though every word felt forced through gritted teeth. At noon, I sneaked a peek at that book while Zhang Xiao was napping. Some of the methods actually made sense, and I quietly tucked them away in my memory. In the afternoon, Zhou Yufan asked me to go dancing, but I politely declined. I have to go help my son look after my grandson. Oh my, there aren't many mothers-in-law as wonderful as you these days, she said with a laugh. A good mother-in-law. In my past life, I was notoriously the worst in the neighborhood. Change is like moving. Uncomfortable at first, but better than living in ruins. When the twins were 3 months old, Zhang Xiao decided to return to work. In my past life, I threw a fit and called her irresponsible. Do you need help during the day? I asked this time. Zhang Xiao bit her lip. Mom, isn't this too much for you? It's no trouble at all. I'm retired anyway. I didn't mention my classes at the senior center, so I started going to their place 3 days a week to help out. I followed Zhang Xiao's care instructions to the letter, even using a thermometer to check the bath water temperature. One day, Kong Kong developed eczema. In my past life, I would have directly applied the homemade ointment, but this time I called Zhang Xiao to ask if we should go to the hospital. The doctor prescribed an ointment. It's in the left drawer, Zhang Xiao said over the phone. I found the ointment and carefully read the instructions before applying it. Kong Kong was crying from the itchiness, so I softly hummed the lullaby that Li Ming loved as a child. Miraculously, he gradually calmed down, gazing at me with moist eyes. In that moment, I suddenly understood what unconditional love truly meant. When Zhang Xiao returned that evening and checked Kong Kang's eczema, she exclaimed in surprise, "It looks much better, Mom. How many times did you apply the medicine?" 3 times. Every 4 hours, I reported dutifully, like a schoolchild. She suddenly hugged me. Thank you for being so thoughtful. The embrace felt so natural, as if we had always been this close. In our past lives, we were like 2 gladiators, but now, I gently hugged her back. On my way home, I bought the latest edition of the parenting encyclopedia. Change begins with acceptance, and acceptance begins with understanding. My classmates at the senior university say I've become more cheerful lately. Zhou Yufan joked. Are you in love? I shook my head with a smile, but thought to myself, yes, I've fallen in love with life all over again. During Sunday's family dinner, I noticed Li Ming's fingers tapping on the table. Ming, have some more fish, I said as I placed a piece in his bowl. He mechanically stuffed it into his mouth, his gaze distant. In the past, I would have scolded him for not paying attention during the meal, but now I just quietly observed. Is work keeping you busy lately? I asked, trying to sound casual. Li Ming's hand paused. Not bad. Same as usual. Zhang Xiao was feeding Kong Kong rice porridge when she glanced up at her husband. Her brow furrowed slightly. She had noticed something was off too. After the meal, Li Ming volunteered to do the dishes. I made an excuse to fetch the apron I'd left in the kitchen and found him standing blankly by the sink, the tap running loudly. Ming, I said softly, the water's overflowing. He snapped back to reality and hurriedly turned off the tap. Mom, I'm fine, just a bit tired. I nodded without pressing further. In my past life, I would have forced him to spill all his troubles and then offered some brilliant advice. On the way home, Li Ming's unusual behavior kept playing on my mind. My phone suddenly vibrated. It was a photo from Zhou Yufan's dance class. I mechanically hit like, but my thoughts were entirely focused on my son. The next morning, I found myself inexplicably drawn to the office building where Li Ming worked. In my past life, I often made these surprise visits to check if he was really working overtime. The cafe's floor-to-ceiling windows offered a clear view of the building's entrance. I ordered a cup of black tea and pretended to read the newspaper. At 10:15, Li Ming hurried into the building, his suit crisp but his shoulders slumped. Around noon, a group of well-dressed people emerged from the building, but Li Ming wasn't among them. Just as I was about to leave, I suddenly saw him walking out of the building alone, clutching a document folder. He stood by the roadside, lost in thought, then abruptly hurled the folder into a trash can and walked into a small noodle shop. After he went in, I found myself inexplicably drawn to the trash can. A corner of the file folder was sticking out. After hesitating for a long time, I finally pulled it out. The words, layoff list, draft, jumped out at me. My hands began to tremble as I flipped to the third page and saw Li Ming's name, followed by the note, severance package, N+2. In my past life, Li Ming had been hiding his unemployment for 2 months, only coming clean after his credit card payments were overdue. I scolded him as good for nothing and a waste of my college tuition, then forced him to beg relatives for job referrals. I shoved the folder back into the trash, my palms drenched in sweat. The black tea had gone cold. I downed it in one gulp, paid the bill, and left. After getting home, I dug out the bank book and property deed. Though not very spacious, this old house left by Li Guoqiang is in a prime location. In my past life, I clung to the belief that family heritage shouldn't be touched, even if it meant watching my son struggle. That evening, I sent Li Ming a WeChat message. Are you free for lunch tomorrow? I'd like to take you out for a meal. He replied quickly, great. I actually have something I wanted to talk to you about. The next day, I arrived at the agreed-upon restaurant half an hour early. Li Ming was 10 minutes late, with 2 big dark circles under his eyes. Mom, he said as soon as he sat down, I might have to. Lost your job, I said softly. His eyes widened. How did you know? Just a guess. I didn't mention the trash bin. Any plans? He twisted his fingers together. Sent out a few resumes, but the job market's tough this year. Please don't tell Xiao Xiao. She just went back to work. We fell silent as the waiter served the dishes. In my past life, I would have immediately offered a perfect solution, but now I just quietly listened to him speak. Actually, I've always wanted to start my own business, Li Ming said suddenly. Cross-border e-commerce. A few former colleagues are interested too. His eyes lit up as he elaborated on the plan in detail. In my past life, I had a deep aversion to unstable jobs and insisted that he take the civil service exam. How much do you need? I asked. After he finished speaking, Li Ming was stunned. Mom, I'm not asking to borrow money from you. I took the passbook and property deed out of my bag and pushed them toward him. There's $1 million in savings here, and the house can probably be mortgaged for about $2 million. His jaw dropped in disbelief. Mom, this is your retirement savings. Money sitting around is just money sitting around, I said with feigned nonchalance. Think of it as an investment. In my past life, I was extremely tight with money, even keeping tabs on every penny when Li Ming went to college. Mom, Li Ming's eyes welled up. What if we lose it all? Is there any business venture that's a sure bet? I patted his hand. I believe in you. Son, those words seemed to flip a switch. Li Ming suddenly slumped over the table, his shoulders shaking with heavy sobs. Patrons in the restaurant were casting sideways glances, but I just gently rubbed his back. In his past life, Li Ming never dared to cry in front of me for fear of being called a failure. Sorry, Mom. He lifted his head, wiping his face haphazardly. The pressure's just too much. It's good to let it out. I handed him a tissue, avoiding any lecture. After the meal, I insisted on going to the bank to transfer the money. Li Ming followed behind me like a sleepwalker. Mom, he suddenly said at the bank entrance, aren't you going to ask me about the details of my startup? In my past life, I would have micromanaged every detail of guiding him on how to run a business. You know the ropes better than I do, I said with a smile. Come to me if you need advice. After the transfer, Li Ming insisted on driving me home. On the bus, he held my hand the whole way, just like when he was a child afraid of getting lost. Mom, you've really changed, he said as we got off. I didn't answer, but reminded him, tell Xiao Xiao soon. Couples shouldn't keep secrets from each other. That evening, Li Ming sent a message. I told Xiao Xiao, and she's very supportive. She even said we could cut back on expenses. I held my phone, tears falling onto the screen. In her past life, Zhang Xiao had a big fight with Li Ming after hearing the news and went back to her parents' home for a week. 3 days later, the young couple came to see me together, bringing a detailed business plan. Mom, take a look, Li Ming said excitedly as he flipped through the pages. We've already registered the company. I put on my reading glasses and studied the document carefully. To be honest, I couldn't understand many of the technical terms, but I could feel their passion. Excellent, I said as I closed the file. When will the opening be? Next Monday, Zhang Xiao blurted out. Thank you for your support, Mom. She's been calling me Mom more and more naturally. Around this time in our past life, we were probably giving each other the silent treatment over some parenting issue. The day before the grand opening, Li Ming invited me to check out their modest office space. 3 young people were troubleshooting computers and greeted me in unison with, hello, Auntie. This is our team, Li Ming said proudly. All key members from our previous company. I brought homemade cookies for everyone. In my past life, I would put on the airs of an investor and nitpick employees' work. Auntie's cookies are delicious, said a girl wearing glasses. Glad you like it, I replied with a smile, resisting the urge to lecture about the importance of frugality for young people. In the first month after opening, Li Ming was run off his feet and lost 5 pounds from the non-stop hustle. Zhang Xiao, juggling work and caring for twins, looked noticeably worn out. I stepped up to help with the kids more often, but always knew where to draw the line. Every time I visited, I strictly followed their parenting methods, even double-checking the formula mixing ratios. One day, when Zhang Xiao was working overtime, I took care of their 2 children at their home. Li Ming came home early for once, collapsed on the sofa and fell asleep with his computer still on. I quietly covered him with a blanket and caught a glimpse of a financial report on the screen. The red numbers were alarming. In my past life, I would have immediately shaken him awake and demanded, where did all the money go? But this time, I quietly closed the laptop and went back to soothing the child to sleep. During dinner, Li Ming suddenly said, Mom, the company's hit a rough patch. I set down my chopsticks and listened quietly until he finished. Tight cash flow, clients delaying payments, rising platform commissions. Each problem made him frown more deeply. How much do you need to tide things over? I asked. No, it's not about the money. Li Ming shook his head. I'm thinking, should we pivot to the domestic market? In my past life, I would have immediately offered some brilliant advice and then scolded him with, you should have listened to me sooner. You know the market better than I do, I said slowly. Whatever you decide, Mom will support you. Li Ming stared at me for a long moment, then suddenly smiled. Mom, you know what, the more you hold back, the more I actually want to hear your advice. My heart skipped a beat. In my past life, I begged him to listen to my advice to no avail. Now that I'm not offering any, he's actually asking for it. As the old saying goes, don't dabble in what you don't understand, I said cautiously. But times have changed. You young people know better. In the end, Li Ming decided to stick to the original plan but adjusted the customer strategy. 2 months later, he called me excitedly to say he'd landed his first big order. Mom, that's enough to cover 3 months' pay, he shouted over the phone. Tears welled up in my eyes instantly. In my past life, I never lived to hear any good news from my son. At the celebration dinner, members of Li Ming's team took turns toasting me, saying, "Without your support, we wouldn't have made it this far." Zhang Xiao held Kong Kong in her arms, beaming with pride. At this time in my past life, she would have been giving me the cold shoulder. On the way home, Li Ming insisted on seeing me back. The night wind tousled his hair as he suddenly said, "Mom, I was really afraid of you when I was little." My heart felt as if it had been pricked by a needle. "And now?" I asked softly. "Now." He put his arm around my shoulder. "Now I feel like the luckiest son in the world." Under the streetlight, I saw tears glistening in his eyes. In our past life, Li Ming never dared to show his feelings for me, let alone put his arm around my shoulder in public. At the doorstep, Li Ming suddenly pulled an envelope from his briefcase and said, "Mom, here's the first installment for the repayment." I opened it and found a check for 100,000 yuan. "No rush. You handle your cash flow first. It's only right," he insisted. "Without you, the company wouldn't be where it is today." The moment I accepted the check, I realized I had completed the most difficult transition, from being a controller to becoming a supporter. Before bed, as usual, I lit a stick of incense in front of Li Guoqiang's photo. "Old man, our son has grown up." Li Guoqiang in the photo seems to be smiling too. Outside the window, a full moon hung quietly in the night sky, as if witnessing the rebirth of this family. Chapter 8, The Trial of Illness, 5. The music from the dance class was deafening. As I followed Zhou Yufan's steps, spinning around, suddenly everything started spinning. "Old Chen." Zhou Yufan's cry seemed to come from a great distance. The left side of my body went limp as if the bones had vanished, causing me to slump sideways. My right hand groped for something to hold on to, but found only empty air. A blinding white light flashed before my eyes, followed by an endless void of darkness. When I opened my eyes again, the harsh glare of the fluorescent light made me shut them immediately. The smell of disinfectant told me I was in a hospital. "Mom," Li Ming's voice came from my right. I strained to turn my head and saw my son's bloodshot eyes and disheveled hair. The last time he came to see me in the countryside in my past life, he looked exactly like this too. "What's wrong with me?" My voice was so hoarse it didn't sound like my own. "A cerebral hemorrhage." "Mom," Li Ming grasped my hand. "The doctors said we got here in time, and the surgery's already been done." My left hand had gone numb. The realization made my heart race. In his past life, Li Guoqiang also had his left hand paralyzed first, and then, "Where's Xiao Xiao?" I asked with difficulty, not seeing my daughter-in-law anywhere. "She went to pick up the kids. She'll be back soon." Li Ming poured a glass of water and carefully helped me sit up. "Don't worry, Mom, you'll be okay." Water trickled down the corner of my mouth. I couldn't even control my own swallowing. In my past life, I sneered at the janitor drooling after his stroke, calling it karma for not exercising. Li Ming stood nervously to the side when the doctor came by on rounds. The white coat rattled off a bunch of medical jargon. The only terms I caught were left-sided hemiplegia and long-term rehabilitation needed. "What's the prognosis, doctor?" Li Ming asked the question I was too afraid to voice. "It depends on the recovery progress." The doctor adjusted his glasses. "Aunt Chen isn't that old, so there's still hope for her to get better." In my past life, I would have immediately questioned the doctor's expertise and demanded a transfer to the best hospital. Now, I just listened quietly, watching Li Ming carefully jot down every instruction. When Zhang Xiao arrived with the twins, I was trying to lift my left hand, but it felt like it belonged to someone else. "Mom," Zhang Xiao rushed to my bedside, her eyes swollen like peaches. "You scared us to death." Anan and Kong Kong stood timidly behind their mother, too afraid to approach the grandmother connected to tubes. In my past life, I would have scolded them for being heartless, but now I just managed a weak smile. "Grandma's fine," I said hoarsely, though the truth was quite the opposite. When the nurse came to give the injection, Zhang Xiao took the initiative to learn how to help me turn over and pat my back. In my past life, I thought this kind of care was a daughter-in-law's duty, but now I'm moved to tears by her willingness to do it. After a week in the hospital, the doctor recommended transferring to a rehabilitation facility. Li Ming and Zhang Xiao were whispering in the hallway, and I faintly heard the words, "cost," and "taking time off." "Just let me recover at a regular hospital," I said as they returned to the ward. "At my age, I'll take whatever improvement I can get." "Absolutely not." Li Ming raised his voice abruptly. "Mom, we've already arranged for the best rehab center." I was stunned. In my past life, Li Ming would never have dared to talk back to me. The rehab center's price list made my blood run cold. 28,000 a month. That's more than my pension. That's too expensive. I shook my head. I'll just exercise at home. Don't worry about the cost. Zhang Xia pressed my hand. The company's doing very well right now. Her hand was warm and dry, reminding me of the day Li Guoqiang passed away. I'd held his hand just like this. On the day of the transfer, a light drizzle fell from the sky. Li Ming carefully helped me into the wheelchair, while Zhang Xiong held an umbrella, leaving half of his own body exposed to the rain. The rehabilitation center's ward was spacious and bright, with a blooming magnolia tree outside the window. The therapist was a cheerful young man who set a strict training plan for me on the very first day. "Auntie, let's work hard together," he said cheerfully. In my past life, I would have scolded him for being disrespectful, but now I just nodded and said, "I'll follow your lead." Every morning at 6, the therapist comes to help me with passive exercises. My left arm felt as heavy as lead, and every movement brought excruciating pain. "Take a break," said the therapist, seeing how drenched in sweat I was. One more set. I gritted through my teeth. A scene from my past life flashed through my mind, dragging my paralyzed left leg across the floor of an old country house, crawling toward a drink of water. Zhang Xia came to spend 2 hours with me every day after work, sometimes bringing the kids, sometimes coming alone. She mimicked the therapist's techniques to massage me. Though her pressure wasn't quite professional, there was an extra tenderness to it. "Isn't the company busy?" I asked her one day. "It is," she replied without looking up, continuing the massage. "But you're more important." Those words struck my heart like an arrow. In my past life, I never heard such heartwarming words before I died. Li Ming brings the twins over to stay for 2 days every weekend. The children went from being scared at first, to gradually daring to approach me, and eventually even climbing onto my sickbed to tell me stories. "Grandma, I drew a little bird for you," and then held up a doodle. The bird in the drawing was clumsily sketched, but I cherished it like a treasure. In my past life, I would have dismissed it as not looking right, but now I had Zhang Xia hang it by the bedside right away. A month later, I could slightly lift my left hand. The therapist cheerfully called it a huge step forward, but I grew impatient with the slow pace of recovery. "Don't worry, Mom," Li Ming reassured me. "It takes time to heal from serious injuries, especially when it's a head trauma." In my past life, I'd said those exact same words to Li Guoqiang, but my tone had been dripping with impatience. One day when Zhang Xiao was working overtime, I was doing my rehab exercises alone in the hospital room. When I tried to pick up the water glass, it slipped from my grasp and shattered on the floor. Water splashing everywhere, a wave of frustration washed over me. I pounded my uncooperative left hand as tears streamed down my face. In my past life, I looked down on useless old fools, and now I'd become one. The nurse hurried over at the sound, quietly wiped the floor, and handed me a glass of water, saying, "Take it easy, ma'am." When Zhang Xiao arrived in the evening, I was staring blankly at the magnolia tree outside the window. Petals drifted down in the wind, much like my own fading vitality. "Mom," Zhang Xiao set down her bag and said mysteriously, "Guess who I ran into today?" I mustered a faint show of interest. "Who was it?" "Mr. Zhou, the dance instructor from the senior center," Zhang Xiao said with a smile. "He was asking why you haven't been coming lately and was really worried about you." My face suddenly grew warm. In my past life, I would never have allowed my daughter-in-law to know about any interaction I had with the opposite sex. "Is he doing all right?" I asked quietly. "That's nice," she said. "We'll dance together once you've recovered," Zhang Xiao said while brushing my hair. "Mom, isn't Mr. Zhou a good person?" I gave a vague response, but my heart was racing. In my past life, I had poured all my emotions into my son, never imagining I still had the right to pursue my own happiness. By the second month of my recovery, my left hand was steady enough to hold a spoon. That afternoon, I insisted on eating by myself. Even though I spilled half of it, it was still progress. When Zhang Xiao arrived, I was practicing walking. The therapist held my waist as I wobbled like a toddler taking their first steps. "Mom, you can walk." Zhang Xiao dropped her bag and rushed over. The three of us shuffled along like conjoined twins, drenched in sweat after just 3 steps. Yet Zhang Xiao and Li Ming were as thrilled as if I'd just finished a marathon. That night, I had a nightmare. I dreamed I was back in that damp, gloomy old house from my past life, dragging my left leg as I crawled toward the water cup on the table. I woke with a start, my pillowcase soaked through, moonlight streamed through the window, glinting off the family photo on the bedside table. It was taken last spring festival. I sat in the middle holding the twins, with Li Ming and Zhang Xiao standing behind us, all beaming with joy. The next day, Zhang Xiao took time off to accompany me to rehab. During a break in training, she suddenly said, "Mom, you know, your illness really scared Mingming and me." Looking at the fine lines around her eyes, I suddenly realized how much stress this illness had put on the kids. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "What are you apologizing for?" Zhang Xia held my hand. "It's just, we suddenly realized you're getting older too." This sentence opened a floodgate of emotions. Perhaps it was the vulnerability from illness. Or perhaps the secret of my rebirth had been weighing on me for too long. I suddenly said, "Xiao Xiao, what if I told you, I've died once before, would you believe me?" Zhang Xiao was stunned. "In my past life, I was a wicked mother-in-law," I said, gazing at the magnolia tree outside the window, its petals drifting down. "I drove you all into a corner, only to die alone in that old country house." Zhang Xiao's hand tightened, but she didn't interrupt me. "After death, I was reborn, returning to the day of Mingming's wedding," I continued, my voice soft as a feather. "In this life, I want to be a good mother-in-law." "Mom," Zhang Xiao interrupted softly, "this is a common hallucination after a cerebral hemorrhage," the doctor said. "I know it sounds absurd," I said with a bitter smile, "but this is why I've changed so suddenly." Zhang Xiao fell silent for a long moment before finally saying, "Whether it's an illusion or not, you are the mother we love most right now." For the first time, she didn't use auntie or grandma, she called me mom directly. My tears burst forth uncontrollably. The term of endearment I had desperately tried but failed to earn in my past life had now come to me so naturally. By the third month of recovery, I could already walk slowly with a cane, though my left hand wasn't very nimble. I could manage basic daily tasks on my own. When the doctor said I could go home to recuperate, Li Ming and Zhang Xiao were as excited as kids. They rearranged the living room and put my bed in the sunniest spot. "Mom, we've hired a caregiver to look after you during the day," Li Ming said. "Xiao Xiao and I will take turns staying with you for your rehab exercises in the evenings." "It's too expensive," I objected without thinking. "It's worth it," Zhang Xia said firmly. "You took care of me the same way when I was young." This sentence struck me like a lightning bolt. So this is how the cycle of kindness comes full circle. The care I once gave her is now returning to me in a different form. On my first day back home, Zhou Yufan came to visit me with her friends from the senior university. They all chimed in with amusing stories from my absence, filling the room with laughter we hadn't heard in ages. "Get well soon, Lao Chen," Zhou Yufan said as she left. "Teacher Zhou is still waiting to waltz with you." Everyone burst into laughter, and my face turned as red as a boiled shrimp. But unlike in my past life, I didn't get angry or embarrassed. That evening, while Zhang Xiao was helping me wash up, she suddenly said, "Mom, Teacher Zhou is really nice. If you like him, don't talk nonsense." I cut in hastily, though I couldn't help but smile. Before bed, Li Ming massaged my left leg with a surprisingly professional touch. "Mingming," I asked softly, "Mom's illness has put you through so much lately." "Mom," he looked up at me with clear eyes, "you raised me when I was young. It's only right that I care for you in your old age." This reminds me of when he had a fever as a child. And I stayed up all night trying to bring it down with cool compresses. It turns out love was always there. I just couldn't see it in my past life, buried under control and impossible standards. Outside the window, a crescent moon hung in the sky. It suddenly hit me. This second chance isn't just about fixing mistakes, it's about truly understanding what family love feels like. Illness took away my health, but gave me something far more precious. Learning to receive love is just as important as learning to give it. At my first senior university class after recovery, my palms were drenched in sweat. "Old Chen," Zhou Yufan's booming voice carried across half the playground, "you've finally returned." She trotted over and hugged me, her perfume so strong it made me sneeze. In my past life, I would have considered such intimacy improper, but now I hugged her back. "Ms. Zhou asks every day when you're coming back," she said with a wink. Pulling me toward the dance studio, my heart suddenly started racing. Mr. Zhou, the retired Chinese teacher I met at the dance class. In my past life, I deliberately kept my distance from him, believing a widow ought to behave like one. In the dance studio, the familiar melody of The Blue Danube flowed through the air. Mr. Zhou stood with his back to the door, instructing a few students on their basic steps. He remained as upright as a pine tree, his silver-gray hair impeccably groomed. Mr. Zhou. Zhou Yufan called out loudly, "Look who's here." Teacher Zhou turned around, his eyes lighting up instantly. "Professor Chen, you've recovered." He walked over briskly, stopping about a meter away from me as if afraid of being too forward. In my past life, I would have immediately taken 2 steps back, but now I stepped forward and extended my hand. "Long time no see." His hand was warm and dry, giving my fingertips a gentle squeeze before letting go, the perfect balance of courtesy. "Shall we dance?" He gestured toward the dance floor, his eyes filled with anticipation. "Let's." I took off my coat, "but we'll have to take it slow." My left leg still not quite right, he guided me onto the dance floor with gentlemanly care. Offering support with his arm while keeping a respectful distance, the music shifted to a slow waltz. I rested my hand on his shoulder, swaying gently to the rhythm. "You're recovering well," he whispered, his breath brushing past my ear. "But don't push yourself." In my past life, I would have immediately retorted, "I know my own body best," but this time, I just nodded and said, "I'll follow your advice." By the time class ended, dusk had settled. Mr. Zhou insisted on walking me home. The autumn sunset stretched our shadows long as we chatted about all the changes at the senior center over the past 6 months. Principal Zhang has retired, and a young vice principal has just taken over. Old Wang from the poetry class has published a collection of poems. Standing at the entrance of the residential complex, I hesitated and asked, "Would you like to come up for a cup of tea?" The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted it. In my past life, I thought it was improper for a woman living alone to invite a man into her home. Teacher Zhou shook his head with a smile. "It's too late today, maybe another time." I breathed a sigh of relief, yet felt an inexplicable sense of disappointment. On my way upstairs, I ran into Aunt Lu from next door. She gave me a meaningful look and said, "Sister Chen, is that a friend of yours?" In my past life, I would have immediately denied any connection, but now I just smiled and said, "A classmate from the senior university." The house felt cold and empty, so I turned on all the lights, only to find it too bright and ended up switching a few off. There were some dumplings in the fridge that Li Ming had brought over last week, so I boiled a few for dinner. A boring soap opera was playing on TV when I picked up my phone and noticed Zhou Yufan had added me to a group chat, senior university dance class. Teacher Zhou was in there too. My phone suddenly vibrated with an incoming video call from Li Ming, and Kong Kong's smiling faces immediately popped up on the screen. "Grandma, we got little red flowers today," Anan exclaimed, holding up a paper covered in star stickers. "I've got one more than my brother." Kong Kong squeezed into the frame, not to be outdone. I grinned so hard my eyes turned into slits. In my past life, I never got to see my grandson go to school before I died. Zhang Xiao appeared on camera. Her hair in a ponytail, fine lines at the corners of her eyes but full of energy. "Mom, did you go to the senior university today?" "Yeah, just got back." I instinctively smoothed my hair. "Professor Zhou will be thrilled to see you," Zhang Xiao said suddenly, a mischievous glint in her eyes. I nearly choked on my dumpling. How do you know Professor Zhou?" "When I visited you at the hospital last time, he came by several times," Zhang Xiao said with a smile. Mingming even mentioned what a nice guy Professor Zhou is. My face flushed as red as a boiled lobster. My daughter-in-law from a past life would never dare tease me like this. After hanging up, I stood on the balcony lost in thought. The night breeze cooled my heated cheeks as elderly couples strolled hand in hand downstairs. In my past life, I thought I was old at 50, but now at 65, I feel like life is just beginning. Over the weekend, Li Ming brought the whole family to visit me. The twins are already in first grade, their backpacks stuffed with homework and awards. "Grandma, how do I solve this problem?" Anan leaned on my knee, pointing at the math homework. I put on my reading glasses and carefully read the question. My past self would have scoffed, "How can you not get something this simple?" But now I patiently guide him to think for himself. Zhang Xiao was busy in the kitchen, and the aroma of braised pork wafted through the air. Li Ming sat on the sofa handling work emails, glancing up at us from time to time with gentle eyes. "Mom," Li Ming said suddenly during dinner, "is Mr. Zhou free this weekend? Let's invite him over for a meal." I nearly dropped my chopsticks. What nonsense are you talking about? Grandma's blushing, Kang Kang shouted, pointing at my face. Don't talk nonsense, child. I pretended to be angry but couldn't help smiling. After dinner, Zhang Xia quietly pulled me aside and said, Mom, you deserve a life of your own. Ming Ming and I both support you. My eyes suddenly welled up with tears. In my past life, I had lived merely as an extension of my son, but now I was being encouraged to become my own person. After Monday's dance class, Teacher Zhou, as usual, walked me home. Walking into the community garden, I gathered my courage. Ming Ming and the others would like to invite you over for dinner this weekend. Mr. Zhou stopped walking, his eyes glimmering softly in the sunset. Really, if you're not willing, that's fine, I said hurriedly, my heart pounding like a drum. Of course I'm willing, he replied softly. I just didn't expect it to be so sudden. That weekend, I was up at 5 a.m. and tried on 3 different outfits before finally settling on the dark red cheongsam that Zhang Xiao bought for me. In my past life, I always thought red was too flashy. But now I wanted to wear something festive for this special occasion. Li Ming and his family arrived at 10 a.m. Loaded down with bags of groceries. The moment Zhang Xiao stepped inside, she gave me a hug and said, Mom, you look absolutely stunning today. Mr. Zhou rang the doorbell right on time at 11 a.m. He wore a light gray suit, holding lilies and a set of hardcover books in his hands. Excuse the intrusion, he said with a slight bow as he handed me the flowers and books. I heard you enjoy poetry. I accepted the gifts, my fingers trembling slightly. In our past life, Li Guoqiang never once gave me flowers. Lunch turned out to be surprisingly relaxed. While discussing company matters, Li Ming and Teacher Zhou unexpectedly found common ground. Teacher Zhou's son-in-law is also involved in cross-border e-commerce. Teacher Zhou, how would you interpret this poem? Zhang Xiao suddenly produced a Tang poetry anthology. Teacher Zhou began explaining with great earnestness, and even the twins were completely captivated. A wave of warmth washed over my chest as I watched the scene. My previous home had never known such harmony. After dinner, Mr. Zhou offered to help with the dishes. While I was wiping the table, Li Ming leaned in and whispered, Mom, Mr. Zhou seems like a good guy. My face flushed again. Don't talk nonsense, child. I'm 35 already, Mom, Li Ming said with a laugh, shaking his head. When I walked Teacher Zhou to the entrance of the residential area, he suddenly said, There's a senior choir performance at the cultural center next Sunday. I have 2 tickets. My heart raced. Sounds good. His eyes lit up. Shall I pick you up then? I nodded, my heart fluttering like a trapped bird. The days that followed suddenly became vibrant and colorful. Besides dance class, Ms. Zhou and I started attending lectures and visiting exhibitions together every week. The neighborhood gossip was growing louder, but I'd stopped caring. Chen, I heard you found a partner. Aunt Lu stopped me at the vegetable market. Just a friend, I corrected her, but the smile on my face gave me away. Before the spring festival, Li Ming suggested taking a family portrait. As the photographer set up the camera, Zhang Xia suddenly said, Mom, should we invite Teacher Zhou to join us? I was speechless with astonishment. In my past life, family photos only included blood relatives. Even Zhang Zhao's parents weren't deemed worthy to be in the picture. I'll ask him, Teacher Zhou agreed readily. On the day of the photo, he wore a Tang suit that matched the color of my qipao, standing beside me with a hint of nervousness. Grandma, smile, the photographer called out. With a click, that moment was forever captured. In the photo, Mr. Zhou and I stood in the back row. Li Ming's family was in the front, and the twins crouched at the very front holding up the character, Fortune. In my previous life, I died alone and lonely, but in this life, I am blessed with the joy of 3 generations living under one roof. At the New Year's Eve dinner, Li Ming raised his glass and said, To Mom and Uncle Zhou, may you enjoy good health and live a long life. Live a long life. The whole family chimed in unison. I took a sip of red wine, gazing at the table full of delicious dishes and smiling faces. When suddenly I remembered the last spring festival of my past life, a bowl of instant noodles, a 3-minute phone call. Mom, why are you crying? Li Ming asked anxiously. I'm just happy. I wiped away my tears and picked up a piece of fish for Teacher Zhou. Try Xiao Xiao's cooking. After the meal, the twins begged to set off fireworks. We stood on the balcony, watching colorful lights bloom in the night sky. Teacher Zhou quietly held my hand. I didn't pull away, as the midnight bell rang. Countless blessing messages flooded my phone. Zhou Yufan sent a photo of us from dance class. Old Chen, may you find happiness in the new year. I replied with a smiley face, then opened the photo of Li Guoqiang and whispered, Old man, I'm doing just fine, rest easy over there. Outside the window, the New Year's snowflakes drifted down in a gentle flurry. This sixth spring festival since my rebirth. I've finally become the person I once admired. Story 2, I was born with stunning beauty. While my sister has an ordinary appearance, every orc my sister fancies eventually becomes drawn to me, until my sister rescued a nine-tailed fox and poured all her love into him. Don't waste your efforts. Fox clans practice abstinence, and ancestral rules forbid forming bonds with humans. My sister smiled triumphantly. Sister, it seems even your beauty has its limits. Later, my sister pushed open the door, and I was wrapped entirely by the fox's fluffy tail, revealing ambiguous kiss marks as I coquettishly complained, It's too big, be gentler next time. My sister completely lost her composure. 1. In the 10th year of being abducted, I was finally brought home by my parents from the police station. My sister rushed over with teary eyes and hugged me. She wore a spring haute couture princess dress with waterproof makeup. My clothes were dirty and tattered, with terrifying scars covering my exposed skin. The contrast was striking. Sister, I've missed you so much. After all these years of hardship, you haven't changed at all. Still as beautiful as when we were children. Indeed, a beauty looks good even in a burlap sack. I faintly curled my lips. You've changed quite a bit, sister, looking much worse than before, even uglier when crying. Aria's body visibly stiffened for a moment. The parents exchanged glances, their expressions filled with disbelief. After all, before being abducted, I was notoriously known in our circle as an obsessive sister protector. I wouldn't allow anyone to speak a single bad word about my sister, especially regarding her appearance. The atmosphere became awkward. In the silence, the bedroom door was pushed open, revealing a young man in loose sleepwear, his expression listless. He was tall and slender, with an almost sickly pale complexion, jet black hair, and deep crimson eyes. Despite making no deliberate movements, there was an inexplicable allure to his every gesture that made it impossible to look away. Rex, you're awake. Why don't you rest a bit longer? Arya quickly composed herself and approached, her tone naturally carrying a hint of playful reproach. She stood in front of the boy, instinctively trying to block his line of sight to me. 10 years have passed. Even though I'm now disheveled and in utter disarray, Arya is still terrified. No wonder her nerves are so on edge. In our family, Mom was once a dazzling superstar, graceful, elegant, and breathtakingly beautiful. Dad was a famously handsome mixed-race heartthrob in high society circles. While his features might not withstand meticulous scrutiny, his striking bone structure and charisma more than compensated. I inherited Mom's delicate features along with Dad's sculpted contours, adding a touch of refined allure. Arya, however, got the worst of both. A flat face, somewhat coarse features, and impossible-to-miss freckles. From childhood to adulthood, every orc she fancied would, without exception, compete to form a bond with me within a week to a month after being brought home. Our parents sometimes took us both to gatherings to select orcs. Things were relatively normal when it was just Arya alone. Whenever we appeared together, nearly all the orcs in the cages would overwhelmingly show favor towards me, acting cute, rolling around, scaling walls, doing everything possible to show off. A few cautiously tried to approach Arya, only to be glared back by her. She's proud and looks down on low-ranking beastmen. I once tried gifting her a rare purple-furred werewolf. Arya was visibly overjoyed. During that period, she kept pestering me to accompany her to frequent werewolf gatherings with that wolfman, stealing the spotlight everywhere. Gradually, many rumors began circulating. Poor Arya, only getting her sister's leftover beastmen and treating them like treasures. It feels like her sister is deliberately humiliating her. The sister must have begged the werewolf for a long time before he finally took the initiative to approach the younger sister. To be honest, if I were the beast man and could choose the beautiful and interesting older sister, I'd definitely not pick the plain-looking younger sister. Having to gaze at the fairy-like older sister every day yet being forced to stay with the unattractive younger sister, my heart aches for the poor werewolf for 3 seconds. It's not that Arya is bad, but Celine the older sister is simply too outstanding. Aside from having a bit of a spoiled young lady's temper, she's practically flawless. Not long after, the werewolf disappeared. By the time I used my connections to find him in the underground black market beast fighting arena, only a hollowed-out corpse remained. Too, my thoughts returned to the present as I sized up the excessively handsome youth before me. Mom promptly introduced, Celine, this is Rex, a nine-tailed fox. He got separated from his clan, and Arya rescued him. The Fox clan is the lineage among beast folk closest to divine status, possessing exceptionally strong spiritual power. Unlike other beast folk who rely on humans, they disdain worldly affairs and rarely enter human society. Nine-tailed foxes are exceptionally rare even among the Fox clan, revered as auspicious celestial creatures. Mother then turned to the boy, Rex. This is Arya's elder sister, Celine, who shares my surname. Rex's gaze lingered for a second on my body covered in ugly scars, his expression remaining composed. I make no secret of my interest in the youth. The gaze that fell upon his pale pink lips was almost tangible, somewhat blatant. Rex remained consistently aloof, though the faintest blush crept imperceptibly to the tips of his ears. Arya grasped the youth's arm, her eyes curving into crescents. Mom, after a long day of travel, why don't you take sister to freshen up? Mom patted her head. Oh my, I was so caught up in happiness. Come, Celine, let mommy give you a nice warm bath. I've booked you the best specialist appointment. These scars will definitely fade away. Mommy knows how much our Celine cares about her beauty. Mom's voice gradually took on a tearful tone. Without any regard for the dirt and foul smell on me, she pulled me into her embrace. I noticed the white hairs at her temples. In just 10 years, she seemed to have aged 30. A wave of bitterness welled up in my heart. 3. After showering, I went online using the new phone Mom bought. After I was abducted, Arya became the only young mistress of the household. Without my halo overshadowing her, she gradually emerged and caught the attention of more people. Whether it was the orc social gatherings or the various afternoon teas hosted by noble families, Arya always managed to attract attention with various high-ranking orcs, especially after saving Rex. Arya suddenly became the object of envy for all the socialites in the city, the absolute center of attention in any crowd. She gradually became more confident and cheerful, breaking away from her usual silent and reticent image, speaking in a coquettish tone, fond of teasing, enjoying admiration, and graciously accepting others' praise and affection. Even the curve of her smile is exactly the same as mine back then, the ugly woman trying to imitate the famous beauty's frown, only to make herself uglier. I rubbed my temples, turned off my phone, and before I knew it, found myself standing before a door, pushing open the bedroom door. The first thing that caught my eye was the boy's smooth, bare back, broad shoulders tapering to a narrow waist, with sleek, well-defined shoulder blades. Hearing the door being pushed open, the nine-tailed fox quickly put on her top, turned around, glanced at me, then awkwardly averted her gaze. The bath towel I had wrapped into a tube dress was coming loose, barely hanging on. Arya's increasingly radiant decade, those people shattered and remolded me time and again, carving seduction into my very bones, until they'd trained a temptress whose every strand of hair exuded allure. The boy's skin was too pale, unable to conceal even a hint of other colors. I clearly saw crimson spreading from behind his ears down to his neck. Your dimples of Venus are beautiful, I praised sincerely. Why didn't you knock? The little fox's Mandarin wasn't very fluent, each word coming out haltingly. This is my home, I retorted righteously when questioned. Nine-tailed foxes are revered figures in both the beast-man world and human society. The fox probably had never been talked back to like this before. It froze for a moment, lips moving but not uttering a single word. I had just taken a step forward when a woman's voice came from behind me. Sister, what are you doing here? Did you take a wrong turn? Arya smiled at the fox, her eyes overflowing with affection. Sorry Rex, I'll take my sister away now. Walking into the living room, I savored the steamy scene from earlier. That fox is quite something. He's my orc, and also half my sister's brother-in-law. Are you complimenting my taste, sis? Arya forced a smile, pink fingertips and such plump pads. They look quite capable. I twirled my hair, leisurely adding the second half. Arya's smile faded. Foxkin practice abstinence. Our ancestors decreed no contracts with humans. If you're entertaining ideas, sister, best abandon them now. I chuckled lightly. Since there's no contract, what right have you to call him your orc? A glint of triumph flashed in Arya's eyes. Because we'll be together forever, sister. Rex is different from other beast men. Your usual tricks won't work on him. Beauty isn't omnipotent. There will always come a day when it fails. After speaking, her gaze drifted to my collarbone, lingering on those ambiguous cigarette burns and bite marks before she chuckled, her voice barely above a whisper. Besides, sister, do you still think you're that pure little princess? That you can effortlessly steal everything from me like before? Mom and Dad have an emergency meeting to attend tonight. With no outsiders around, Arya couldn't even be bothered to keep up appearances. A crisp slap echoed through the air. This time, I put all my strength into it. This was the first time I'd ever laid hands on Arya since I could remember. Caught completely off guard, she staggered from the slap and fell to the ground, one side of her face immediately swelling up. The Fox's bedroom door opened again, even as we were already in a full-blown fight. Rex's expression still showed little fluctuation. That perpetually aloof and indifferent demeanor makes one want to shatter and ruffle him. Pulled down from the divine pedestal, the fox approached as Arya covered her face and called out to him, a surge of grievance welling up. Rex, it hurts so much. This is our clan's ointment. Applying it will reduce the swelling. The fox gently helped Arya up from the ground, yet subtly avoided her attempt to lean into his embrace. Arya looked somewhat embarrassed. At her core, Arya is a lady who's been bound by rules since childhood, so even her attempts at flirting come off as awkward and unnatural. Celine, it was the first time the fox had called my name, in an utterly cold tone. I took his hand and slowly pressed it against my face, my snow-white peaks pressing tightly against his chest, the heat scorching. The fox unconsciously rubbed his fingertips affectionately against my face twice, then quickly withdrew his hand upon realizing, lowering his gaze, yet the sense of ambiguity gradually intensified. If you feel sorry for me, then don't ask why. Just help your master hit back without distinguishing right from wrong. After all, I'm used to being beaten. My smile was alluring, my eyes shimmering with a seductive glow. Even the arc of falling tears is moving, carrying a beauty of brokenness. I've been delicate in temperament since childhood, but because Arya calls me sister, I always put on a brave face for her, as if to say, big sister will handle anything that comes our way. I know I'm more likable than Arya. I also know that in many situations, I just need to act a little pitiful and guide things slightly. Everyone would then direct all their criticism at Arya, because of this. Whenever conflicts arose with Arya, regardless of who was right or wrong, I rarely showed my grievances. I'm aware of my advantages and the favoritism I enjoy, so I've always been patient and protective toward Arya. But now, I only regret not being more vicious back then, to add fuel to her insecurities and sensitivities, burning away what little light and hope she had left. She isn't my master, for Rex spoke hurriedly, stumbling over his words, clearly derailed by my line of thought. Why were you two arguing? Arya doesn't want me to like you, says I'm dirty and unworthy of you. I wiped my tears sadly, burying my head in the fox's shoulder, but I just can't help it. Celine, what nonsense are you talking? Don't touch him, Rex. Haven't you always disliked close contact with people? Arya sounded flustered. What nonsense? Are you saying you support me liking Rex? I leaned limply against the nine-tailed fox's embrace. Yuri, Arya's elder sister. According to human social conventions, you shouldn't have feelings for me, Rex replied with deliberate seriousness, word by word. Several times he tried to push me away, but my words froze all his movements. Little fox, even my own sister finds me repulsive. Do you think I'm filthy too? Fox spirits possess divine nature, though they disdain worldly affairs. Their bones ache with universal compassion. This kind of naive saint is most susceptible to moral blackmail. Divine beasts and celestial creatures, Arya wouldn't dare profane them, not even her parents would approach without reverence. But I never believed in these things. If there truly were a merciful God, where was he when I was on my knees begging the traffickers like a dog not to tear my clothes? Where was he again when the red-hot branding iron and the crimson cigarette burns fell upon me? In the end, this farce concluded with the fox helplessly carrying me, who was crying pitifully. Back to the bedroom in a bridal carry. After all the commotion, Rex seemed to have forgotten about Arya being slapped. Just like 10 years ago, the orc Arya brought home was completely swayed by my emotions, leaving her with only a back view. After confessing my feelings, my behavior gradually became more unrestrained. 5. During lunch, I gently rubbed against the fox's calf under the table. My shoe tip tracing upward along the muscle lines before stopping at a certain spot to press and knead. Arya kept putting food into Rex's bowl, noticing his unusual expression and asking with concern, "Rex, why are you sweating? Is the food not to your liking, or has your wound reopened?" "No, I'm done eating." The fox gave me a deep look before getting up and returning to his room on the second floor. Arya's heartbroken gaze followed him all the way. Her mother sighed with a smile. "Arya, it's not that Mom is old-fashioned about girls pursuing boys, but you're staking everything on this love. If something goes wrong someday, I'm afraid you won't be able to handle it." Arya interrupted her mother. "That won't happen, Mom. I don't expect Rex to like me back. I just want us to live a simple life together, never abandoning each other. Rex isn't some shallow creature chasing looks and thrills. I saved him, and I'm his only tether to this world. He has no one but me, and I love him. That's enough." When she said this, Arya kept looking in my direction. It felt like both a warning and a provocation. I smirked and raised an eyebrow at her. After finishing the meal, I turned and went upstairs. In the bathroom mirror on the second floor, a pair of furry fox ears reflected back. The tear mole at the corner of the youth's eye was so red it seemed about to drip blood. I entered, closed the door behind me, and picked up the peach-flavored mouthwash to rinse. No wonder the nine-tailed fox isn't resisting no matter what I do today. The mating season of beast men is the most dangerous period. If not handled properly, the mildest consequences going berserk, while the worst could be fatal. During this time, beast men from various regions are gradually becoming restless. A few days ago, Arya asked the nine-tailed fox about the mating season. Rex dismissed it with a single sentence. "Foxes don't have a mating season." Now it seems he was lying. "Celine, you don't know." Rex's voice was shockingly hoarse. "I suppose you meant to say, shameless." I wasn't in a hurry to leave, leaning against the wall while watching this illiterate fox. "I just want to help you. Isn't it uncomfortable if you can't let it out?" My natural voice is soft, and even normal speech sounds coquettish after being trained by those demons. To the fox's ears, it probably sounded no different from seduction. "You, stay away from me. That's how you can help." The fox's veins bulged on his arms, his neck arched back, sweat droplets rolling down his Adam's apple. Like a curious child, I grabbed his restless beast ears and gave them a squeeze. "If you don't like me, why do you get aroused by me?" "Celine, don't. Stop this. Get away. You mustn't," Rex murmured, his crimson eyes clouded with a haze of desire, yet his arms betrayed him, wrapping around my waist and pulling me tightly into his embrace. The untouchable flower of the highlands finally succumbed to lust. Arya's voice came from outside. "Rex, are you in the bathroom? I was a bit worried, so I came to check on you." "No need," the fox refused bluntly. Thinking about those firm words Arya said at the dining table, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Arya froze for a moment. "Rex, are you alone in there?" You can go back now." "All right, I'll leave then. Be sure to call me if anything happens." Arya sounded suspicious. After speaking, she paused at the doorway for a few seconds. I deliberately stood on tiptoe, licked my lower lip where Rex had bitten it until it bled, and whispered in his ear with a breathy voice, "Little fox, I'll forgive you on behalf of your ancestors." "All right." Rex remained motionless and silent until Arya's footsteps faded into the distance. The fox's kiss fell heavily along with its tears. I was spouting flirtatious nonsense, but he wouldn't let me make a sound. Only when the corners of my eyes are forced to glisten with moisture do I get a moment to catch my breath. "Brother-in-law, tell me, does this count as betraying Arya?" I pant against his ear while exhaling warm breath. In her heart, "You're the epitome of absolute loyalty." Rex's body stiffens momentarily, his eyes so crimson they seem capable of dripping blood at any second. He grips my shoulders and pushes me down. The next second, all my words shattered in my throat, until a low gasp. "Celine, I hate you." The fox's usually cool voice trembled slightly. I picked up a tissue to wipe my soiled hands and the corner of my mouth, giving him a seductive smile. "It's okay. I love you, baby." "You liar." The little fox retracted its beast ears, tugging at the barely hanging belt, its eyes gradually reverting to a dark red hue. Its knuckles turned white as it gripped the wash basin. The heart-wrenching sob in its voice enough to shatter anyone's heart. "You're Arya's sister. Why are you treating me like this?" "Yes, why indeed. Perhaps it's because Arya loves him to madness. Perhaps he gave Arya too much hope. Help Arya step out of the shadows and regain her flesh and blood." His tenderness towards Arya is cruelty towards me, whether it's hate or love. I want him to remember this feeling. Every time I want to spend my life with Arya, I remember this afternoon, remember me. The Fox clan's mark is much fiercer than other beastmen's marks. 6. Even just a temporary mark disturbed my entire spiritual energy, making it extremely unstable. My head throbbed with pain, and the pillow was soaked with cold sweat. I didn't even have the strength to call for help. In the darkness, something suddenly wrapped around my lower back through the blanket. Don't move. Rex's characteristically cold voice sounded in my ear. The Fox clan mark seemed to sense the presence of its kind and finally calmed down, transformed into a warm current, flowing through every limb and bone. Celine, if I had been 10 minutes later, you would have died, you know that. Though it was an accusation, the boy's voice carried an indescribable note of grievance. I nodded and shook my head randomly, turned over, and burrowed deeper into the fox's embrace, muttering in a muffled voice. You said you hated me, so why did you save me? Do you secretly like me? If you hadn't left marks with other beast men before, this situation wouldn't have occurred. Rex's voice was calm, analyzing matter-of-factly, betraying no emotion. But you bear nearly 100 beastmen's marks. What? Jealous that you're just 1 out of 100? What expression do you think Arya would have if she knew you climbed into my bed at night? I said weakly, still unable to resist teasing. Quiet, I'm discussing serious matters. The nine-tailed fox snapped in frustration, nearly cracking from embarrassment. I muttered under my breath, then why don't you shut me up? You're quite good at that, aren't you? Mid-sentence, I felt something scorching press against me. Just as I was about to speak, my eyelids suddenly grew too heavy to open. It must have been some hypnotic secret technique performed by the nine-tailed fox. Half asleep, I faintly heard whispers by my ear. Celine, how have you lived these past 10 years? It was not a peaceful sleep. I dreamed again of the day I was abducted. I used all my strength to rescue Arya from the traffickers, telling her to run, only to be captured myself. A long time later, I turned on the TV and saw the news report from that time. In the footage, 12-year-old Arya pointed the police in the opposite direction of the traffickers' escape route. By the time the rescue team realized, it was too late. They had missed the optimal rescue window. Everyone, including her parents, thought Arya was directionally challenged. Being so young and having suffered a fright, she must have mixed up such important information. But in reality, Arya could memorize a route after walking it just once since she was 6 years old. The truly directionally challenged one, who can't tell east from west when going out, is me. As a child, Arya was often bullied because of her introverted personality. Only by swapping personas with Arya and convincing my parents that I wouldn't get lost would they feel at ease letting me chase after those bullies who mocked her. When I woke up, Rex was already gone. 7. The blanket still carried his scent. Arya was downstairs picking out a handbag when I remembered it was time for the annual Beastkin Exchange Conference again. This is the first grand gathering I've attended since being recovered. Arya effortlessly navigated among the socialites with the high-ranking orcs kept by her family. If we rewind 10 years, the person standing in that spot should have been me, holding my wine glass. I found a spot to stand as whispers began circulating around me. Did you see that beauty next to Arya? Must be her sister. How come we've never seen her before? Are they really siblings? The difference is staggering. The sister looks like an actual fairy. What's the point of being pretty when she's tainted? Don't you know? Arya's sister was abducted for 10 years. When they found her, she was doing that kind of work. Haven't you seen the video online? Damn, who posted this? It's vile to leak someone's lowest moment like this. What a waste. She's genuinely the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. Sounds of sudden realization echoed all around. The gazes directed at me grew more complex with mixed emotions. Some nearby even deliberately led the beastmen away, intentionally distancing themselves from me. A few defended me. A woman's virtue was never defined by her skirt. What era is this? You're still so feudalistic. Shouldn't the real culprits be those human traffickers and the people who leaked the video without permission? But these voices were quickly drowned out. Meanwhile, Arya found herself completely surrounded. Arya, that nine-tailed fox of yours has been recuperating for nearly half a year. When are you going to bring it out for us to see? Arya tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. He's quite introverted by nature and doesn't care for crowds. Someone muttered discontentedly. They always say that, constantly teasing us. I bet the nine-tailed fox doesn't even care about her and won't listen to her. Arya always acts like she's the girlfriend. But she's probably just a nagging old woman behind the scenes. When a celestial beast appears, all other beasts submit. Why would they even look at humans? Probably only a fairy can command celestial beasts. Wait, holy shit, isn't that the nine-tailed fox? I followed the person's gaze and saw Rex just stepping through the door. He changed into a casual suit paired with a dark red tie, revealing nothing, yet his indifferent demeanor remained. Yet it inexplicably exuded allure. Perhaps this was simply a fox's innate nature. The moment he entered, the surrounding beast men knelt in unison. Arya's friend smugly retorted to the complaining girl, "That backfired, didn't it? Arya's nine-tailed fox is here, and they're clearly on great terms." "Arya, hurry up." He came over quietly without saying anything. "He must be planning to surprise you." Arya pursed her lips in a shy smile, adjusted her accessories, and nearly broke into a run. "Rex, what brings you here?" "Celine." The nine-tailed fox and Arya spoke simultaneously. Rex gave Arya a slight nod and walked straight towards me, speaking more fluently than before. "You can't have anything cold." I swallowed the last bite of chilled watermelon, and sure enough, my stomach began to ache. "Didn't I tell you to stay home these days and not wander around?" The typically expressionless fox's face became like a kaleidoscope. "Come back with me now, my stomach hurts." I reached out and whined, "Carry me on your back. I told you not to eat it, but you insisted." Such disobedient behavior would make you kneel in the ancestral hall if you were in our fox clan. The nine-tailed fox half dragged, half pulled me out of the gathering. Arya stood frozen in place. She softly called, "Rex," several times, but the fox was too angry to hear. Waves of laughter erupted all around. "What the heck?" After all this fuss, the nine-tailed fox came looking for Sister Arya. The nine-tailed fox and Celine are so sweet together. A pair of visual powerhouses with chemistry off the charts. I almost forgot the nine-tailed fox and Arya were the original couple. Pfft, they never were. Haven't you heard? Fox spirits have never formed bonds with humans since ancient times. At most, it's just Arya's unrequited love. Damn, not only is it a mythical beast, but it's also insanely handsome. You know what? Sister Arya's acting cute feels much more natural than Arya's. Arya kinda feels like she's trying to imitate her sister but missing the essence. Just arrived at the doorstep when I heard my parents' voices from inside. 8. Dad was furious. "Which newspaper leaked my daughter's video? Once we find out, contact the board and have them blacklisted immediately." Mom's tone grew sharper. "Xiao Zhang, contact my PR team from my industry days." "Yes, the one that fought through when I was being trashed online. I need to clear my daughter's name." I pushed the door open, and both of them hung up their phones simultaneously, putting on warm smiles. "Celine, the party just started. Why are you back with Rex? Where's Arya? Didn't she come with you?" "Mom, Dad, no need to investigate. I know who leaked the video." I opened WeChat on my phone and played the video my friend Verena had sent me. Verena was a girl trafficked the same year as me. On the day she was rescued by the police, she was working as a waitress at the scene. The rules of pleasure establishments superficially forbid cameras and electronic devices, but in reality, staff secretly record audio and video throughout to prevent customers from skipping payment. In the footage Verena recorded that day, the scene was chaotic, with my parents clutching my disheveled clothes as they held me. Customers fled in all directions, only Arya huddled in the corner, silently raising her phone to point at me. After watching the video, Mom's lips trembled slightly. "Can we trust this friend? Could the video have been photoshopped?" Arya has no reason to do this. Or maybe someone else sent it using Arya's phone. But why would Arya record it? Why? Mom murmured to herself. Dad remained silent for a long time, his gaze at me somewhat complicated. "Celine, since you knew Arya secretly recorded the video, why didn't you confront her immediately? Instead, you're only telling us now after the video has been posted online." "Celine, I always thought you were a kind-hearted child. Why must you turn the household upside down? Have you forgotten everything? Wouldn't it be better for our family to live in harmony?" I simply smiled without speaking, my entire body aching as if pricked by needles. "I'll take Celine back to her room to rest." Rex interrupted our conversation, picked me up, and went straight upstairs. Mother collapsed onto the sofa, her eyes somewhat vacant, continuously murmuring, "I need to find Arya. I must go find her." Yet no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get up. Dad kept watching the video over and over. Since childhood, I've noticed that Dad is an extremely rational, cold-blooded businessman. He was born indifferent, reserving what little affection he had entirely for Mom. Being good to me and Arya wasn't out of fatherly love, but purely because of his love for Mom. He's so smart. He must have immediately guessed I did it on purpose, deliberately disobeyed Rex to attend the party. Making Arya humiliate herself on the spot, intentionally waited until the video was released before presenting evidence, completely sealing Arya's guilt. Perhaps he had vaguely guessed the truth about my abduction 10 years ago. He just didn't want to see Mom heartbroken, so he chose to gloss over the truth. Little fox, am I wicked? 9. I lay on the bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. The backlash has begun. Rex pulled open my collar, the Fox clan mark faintly glowing with a blood-red light. I hooked my arms around his neck and pulled him down. I used you, aren't you angry? I am angry, but Arya was the one in the wrong this time. Oh, still a fair-minded little fox. 9 fluffy tails appeared behind Rex. Celine, this might hurt a little. What? The 9-tailed fox spoke in an extremely low voice. I need to form a contract with you. This is the only way to stop the backlash from the temporary mark. Mom and Dad are downstairs. I know. The 9-tailed fox practically hissed through clenched teeth. Fox spirits must not form contracts with humans. I know that too. Can you find the right spot? I already told you I know. The 9-tailed fox paused for a moment, then in a fit of pique, leaned down and bit my lip. The pain from the backlash gradually faded, replaced by another kind of piercing agony that overwhelmed my mind. When the door was pushed open, I couldn't even lift a finger. Rex's furry tail draped over me. Failing to cover the love marks all over my body, Arya stood at the door. I coquettishly said, "It's too big, be gentler next time." Rex, she seduced you, didn't she? Arya kept wiping her tears with the back of her hand. 10. Rex, I saved your life. We promised to stay together forever. You're all I have, even if you don't like me. Why Celine? Why did it have to be her? Arya grew increasingly emotional as she spoke, almost screaming hysterically. Her mother walked up to her and slapped her. Arya, why would you do this to your sister? She loves you so much. Why did you post Celine's indecent video? Love me? Arya seemed to have heard something amusing, laughing until she nearly choked. Does anyone love me? Yes, Mom, you love me, but you prefer Celine who knows how to act cute. Dad never loved me. He even found me embarrassing. Those high society ladies and beast men forget about me the moment they see Celine. Only Rex belongs to me completely. Celine. You've already taken everything from me. Isn't that enough? Why must you take Rex too? He's my last hope. Arya's eyes gradually filled with venom. I just wanted to be someone's one and only. Is that too much to ask? Why must you extinguish even the last glimmer of light in my life? Celine, you should have died in the hands of those traffickers. Mother wept uncontrollably, fainting several times. I casually threw on a robe. Arya, there were 2 people who truly loved you once. Impossible. Everyone's eyes were clearly only on you. That purple-haired werewolf has admired you for years. Back at the Beastkin exchange, he begged me to buy him just so he could be by your side day and night. But he died, the day before he planned to confess his feelings to you. Arya sneered. You think I'd believe that? The greeting card he sent you before he died is on the table in the storage room. Just open it and see for yourself. You've kept this card for over a decade, yet never opened it, because you're afraid to face what's inside. Dad said calmly. Celine, are you trying to drive your own sister to her death? I took a step closer to Arya and asked, Arya, who do you love the most? Celine, have you lost your mind? I wasn't disturbed by Arya and continued my statement. Who does Big Sister love the most? Big Sister loves Arya the most. Arya also loves Big Sister the most, because Big Sister is beautiful, buys Arya lots of delicious food, and protects Arya. This was a conversation between me and Arya when we were 6 years old. Mom and Dad were out late discussing business, so little Arya came to me holding her pillow, asking to sleep together. I gently wiped the tears from Arya's eyes. Arya, the other person who truly loved you enough to give their life for you, was me 10 years ago. But Celine and the purple-haired werewolf both died by your hand. Mom was sent to the hospital for an 4 drip. Dad dropped all company matters to accompany her. Celine, after your mother wakes up, I'm taking her on a world tour. Maybe 3 days, maybe 3 months, maybe 3 years. You and Arya are both her daughters, but I don't want her to face this. Celine. I'm sorry. I don't accept that. I came out of the hospital and saw the message Verena sent me. Almost all of it was negative news about Arya. When the wall is about to collapse, everyone gives it a push. Apart from the exposure of her hiring someone to distribute indecent videos of her own sister, many netizens dug up past grievances. Some even suspected that my previous abduction was orchestrated by Arya. I called the mental hospital and instructed, don't let her go online recently, no wonder she's so emotionally sensitive. Miss Arya was dreaming about you today, saying, Sister, Mom and Dad are out, let's go fly a kite. That fox isn't my husband, and I don't care about Arya's life or death, but since she saved the fox's life, and the fox wants to repay the kindness, please take good care of her, use only the most expensive things. The Fox clan has money, got it. I hung up the phone, and Rex looked somewhat gloomy. I patted his shoulder. From now on, I'll leave this matter entirely in your hands. I don't want to hear any more news about Arya. Celine, come back to the Fox clan with me. I looked into the nine-tailed fox's beautiful eyes and shook my head. I broke your clan's rules, they'd probably skin me alive, but we've formed a covenant. So what? So, the nine-tailed fox stammered, we should be together. I don't stay with people who don't like me. I like you. The fox grabbed my wrist as I was about to leave. I never said I didn't. Foxes don't have a mating season. Because we only get aroused by the ones we love. Rex's voice grew softer, his ears turning increasingly red. But I've done many bad things to you, I know, so you should be punished. That makes sense. I nodded. What's the punishment? Let me bully you back. What? I thought I was hearing things. The fox's tail swayed slightly. You humans are all bad, especially you. As a celestial beast, I have a duty to keep an eye on you. All right. I felt like laughing. How long are you planning to watch me? That depends on how long you live. A pair of sisters came running over holding a kite. The older sister runs ahead, while the younger sister chases behind. The azure sky is clear as if washed by water, the wind blows, and the kite soars higher and higher. The end.